Hey, what's up, everyone, and welcome to Men vs. Movies. I'm Griffin, as always, and you might be wondering, why the hell can't we see your face? And that's a great question. Unfortunately, for this specific video, I can't even talk today. For this particular video, we wanted to do more of a podcast format, and if you clicked on the video, you clearly know we're going to be ranking the films in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And we wanted to get more of a discussion going on there, and video files, they're just a lot of, mismatching and stuff like that. And so we just figured the best way to do this was going to be to do it in a podcast format, just out of ease. So hopefully you enjoy this. Just flip it on in the background while you're working and enjoy the sweet sound of our voices. Now, you heard me say we a few times. Well, I'm joined by two very special guests. One you will probably know, and the other you definitely will know. So that's a good thing. Brody, special guest number one. Why don't you go introduce yourself? My co-host on The Words Are Not Enough.
Oh, there you go. That's my whole introduction right there. It's Brody, Brody Cervelli, and yeah, I sometimes do stuff on this channel, particularly the weekly podcast.
Mean do stuff. You are part of the channel, Brody. You can't just pick and choose the stuff you want to do.
I mean, yeah, but you introduced me as a guest, so I felt like I was gonna. You know what I mean?
Okay, you're a guest when it comes to these kinds of things. True. You don't usually do these kinds of things.
Yes, usually I exist solely in the realm of Bond, but here
you
I
are
am.
James Bond. Anyways, so my other guest, you will also remember if you've watched any of our videos before, especially if you've watched our collaborations. I've got Tyler Tompkins on the other line. Tyler, say hello to the world.
What's up, man? I'm really happy to be on here, and I'm really happy that we all agree that Danny Elfman's a better composer than Hans Zimmer.
Amen.
Wow. We may we might need to take this out back.
That sounds like it's two against one on that.
Yeah, I know. I'm over. This is what I hate about bringing you guys on to an episode like this, because you two tend to agree more than you realize, and
Excellent.
I'm the lone wolf.
I mean, it makes me feel very nice. It makes me feel less like a contrarian, which is very, very reassuring.
You know what? Both of you can leave. I'm just kidding. So anyways, yes, we're going to be ranking the Marvel Cinematic Universe. There has been 17 films in the universe thus far, and we're going to be giving you our brief thoughts on each one of them. And the way this whole thing is going to work is essentially we're going to do our 17 through 14. Each of us are going to go, and then we're going to do our 13 through 10. Our 9 through 5, and then our 4 through 2, and then reveal our number 1 at the end. So we're each going to take turns doing these little chunks, and I think the best way to determine who starts is for me to choose Brody. So Brody, you're going to kick this one off.
Wow, how random. Yeah,
it really was just
okay.
Random.
So should I just get straight into it then?
Yeah, just go ahead, dive, man. Let's do 17 through, what is it, 14?
17 through 14, yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, well, we'll start this off. I feel like this is fairly a conventional start. Number 17 is Iron Man 2. Iron Man 2 is trash. Absolute garbage. It's a waste of my time and your time, so don't even bother defending it. There's just too much going on. Instead of getting a quality sequel, as Jon Favreau had kind of hoped to do, about like adapting Demon in the Bottle, we got a bunch of really half-assed B-plots that were sort of tied around a S.H.I.E.L.D. plot to set up Avengers, and it was just kind of, I don't know, it's hard for me to sit through again, and I don't really think there's anything of substance in that movie, really. It's just a really lackluster follow-up to the first movie.
Yeah, for sure.
Number 16 is The Incredible Hulk, which is kind of an odd, I don't know, I don't hate this one. It's so low on the list just because I have no feeling towards it whatsoever. It kind of just exists, and it doesn't even really feel connected to the rest of the MCU anymore. Not just because of the whole Mark Ruffalo thing, replacing Edward Norton, but just aesthetically, it feels. I think we've talked about this in private before, but it feels like it belongs to the superhero films of the early 2000s. It's like the last hurrah of that kind of style. And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Whereas Iron Man even though it came out slightly before, it feels more in tune with the where superhero films were headed. So for that reason, I just have no compulsion to ever watch that movie ever again.
Sure. Yeah.
So it just doesn't register for me. Number 15 is one that has actually gone up a little bit since I rewatched it in anticipation for Thor Ragnarok, which is Thor: The Dark World. It's still very low on the list, and I still don't like it very much. But I found things that I actually remember liking a lot more like this time around, which like mainly just stuff to do with Loki. All the Loki stuff was really, really enjoyable. Tom Hiddleston continues to own that role. And if the whole movie had been about him, I think I would have liked it a lot more. But unfortunately, there's a whole main plot to do with Thor and Jane, and it sucks. And there's so much like tonal whiplash in this movie where it's trying to be big and epic and like a Lord of the Rings kind of thing, but then it's also a wacky comedy with Kat Dennings and like oddball stuff going on, and it just doesn't work. It overall just doesn't work. And then you've got boring villains like Malekith and
he's like the definition of the Marvel villain problem.
Really, absolutely is. I just don't care. Whoever made him speak Elvish or whatever that language was, the made-up language, the entire movie should be fired because
it's like a bad Star Trek like
honestly,
rip-off.
yeah, and it's so because he can tell Christopher Eccleston, who's like a good actor, doesn't know how to emote because he doesn't know what he's saying, and it just I don't know, it all falls very flat, and it's just a drag to watch.
For sure.
Even though I did enjoy it slightly more the second or third, however many times I've watched it now. Most recently, I enjoyed it a little bit more. Number 14 is Doctor Strange, which is going to piss some people off.
Man,
but Doctor Strange is so blah. I don't hate it. That's the thing. I don't hate it. I think it's a good movie. I think it kind of encapsulates everything I kind of have a problem with in Marvel movies right now. It's very formulaic. I could sort of like I was waiting for every beat to happen, and then sure enough, it happened. There were some creative twists to that formula. In like the third act is actually fairly strong compared to a lot of other Marvel movies. I think the villain Caecilius, complete waste of Mads Mikkelsen as
I wouldn't say complete,
absolute
but yeah,
complete waste. Like if they, I would have preferred if they had made him Dormammu instead, because at least then he'd come back and do stuff. But he was just a henchman essentially the entire movie, but they didn't tell us he was a henchman until the third act, so it was kind of lackluster.
Right, I guess, yeah.
And then Dormammu, the whole Dormammu thing, I would have rather if he had more of a presence in the whole movie, because then I would have actually had a chance to attach myself to him as a character. Although his actual little scene at the end is cool, I had no investment in it other than the fact that Doctor Strange was going to outsmart him. And then just like there's a lot of out of place humor in this one as well that really gets to me.
I'll come back to that when I talk about it. For sure.
We're doing spoilers, right?
Well, yeah, obviously.
Okay, because so like when the Ancient One dies, that's actually I feel like that's a really great scene. One of the more like sort of emotional scenes in the MCU.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a really great character moment for Doctor Strange. But then it's immediately undercut with this stupid, goofy slapstick cape wiping his tears and stuff. And it's like just the movie couldn't even let me have a nice moment to be upset with the character.
No.
And let me experience the character's darkest moment. It wouldn't even let me do that, which kind of pissed me off. And then that kind of happens a couple times throughout the movie where like every time Doctor Strange, like the whole Beyonce joke was kind of dumb. It didn't really work for me in terms of like who they set up Doctor Strange's character to be. If you're going to make him unlikable, go with it, run with it instead of half-assing it and making him unlikable. But then also he's got a nice side, and no, just give me something. Otherwise he comes across as a really lame Tony Stark clone, and that just, I don't know. I like Doctor Strange's character actually surprisingly a lot better in Thor Ragnarok, even though he only had like one scene. I thought the kind of like the aloof stoicism was really, really well portrayed in Thor, whereas in Doctor Strange they kind of tried to round out his edges a little bit to make him a more compelling protagonist, and it ended up making him more generic, in my opinion, anyway.
Sure.
So that's my 17 through 14.
I mean, it's a fair list. I disagree on Doctor Strange for a lot of points, but we'll come back to that one. All right, Tyler, you are up next. You're 17 through 14.
Yeah, so coming in at number 17, I have The Incredible Hulk, and
wow.
I'm going to explain why. The reason I have it at 17 is because it's like the only one I can't remember much about it. I mean, I haven't seen it in such a long time, and I wouldn't feel comfortable putting it somewhere else in the list. And I'm going to kind of repeat a lot of the things that Brody said. To me, this one feels completely different than every other MCU movie. This feels like it, belongs in the earlier 2000 movies, and I like it. It's good, and Edward Norton's good, but I don't really remember much about it, and it's not a movie I'm like dying to rewatch. So that's why I have it at number 17. But number 16, I have Iron Man 2, which again is not all these movies. I like them, so that's why it was really hard placing the movies where they were. But Iron Man 2, it's forgettable. Mickey Rourke is totally wasted. I like some of the scenes with him, but he's totally wasted. He could have been one of the best, if not the best villain in the entire MCU, but just really wasted. And do you know who wrote the script for this movie?
I don't, actually.
It's Justin Theroux or whatever.
No kidding.
He wrote the script.
Really?
I think that's very strange. Yeah, the reason he wrote it is because I believe Ben Stiller told Jon Favreau about his work on Tropic Thunder and how he was a co-writer, so they let him write it. It's kind of an odd thing to me.
That's really odd, actually, yeah.
Yeah,
That's so strange.
Yeah, and again, it's just forgettable. It's a movie I really don't remember anything about other than the race car scene with Whiplash. And
that's the thing. That's the only scene that anyone ever remembers from it is the Monaco race. Yeah,
dude, I don't even remember how the movie ends. I couldn't tell you how it ends or anything. I don't remember anything. That's all I remember. But,
that's actually a valid point. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and then number 15, Thor: The Dark World. Again, I'm sure that's going to be on really high on everyone's list or really low.
I was making my top two.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. This is another movie I don't hate. I actually kind of like it. It's I remember seeing it in the movie theater. I went in with really low expectations because I was hearing really negative things, but I ended up liking it because of Loki. This movie made me love Loki, and I wish there would have been even more of him. The whole Natalie Portman thing, as Brody said, kind of got in the way. I never really liked her in the Thor movies. So, yeah, Thor. And again, this is another movie I don't really remember a lot that happened in it. I only saw it once, and so that's why it's low. And now to get really controversial, number 14 is Ant-Man.
Oh, bless your heart.
Damn
bless
it,
your
you
heart.
guys and your hatred for
this movie
Ant-Man,
is
man.
extremely overrated. I think Ant-Man is extremely overrated.
Oh, Tyler, you're making my night.
Yeah, dude. Okay, so here's my I do think it's overrated, and the problem I can't watch this. Like, I can't watch this movie because deep down I know Edgar Wright could have directed a version of this movie that would have been 10 times better. I think Peyton Reed did a fine job, and he made a good movie that Disney wanted him to make.
I thought he did a great job.
Yeah, it was all right. And like I know a lot of people say Michael Pena is funny. I really don't think he's that great. I mean, I think he's all right, but those scenes, I don't think they're like amazing or anything. And I hate the villain. The villain is so bad in this movie.
Who
plays the villain? What's his name again?
Corey Stoll.
Very cheesy. Felt like totally out of place.
No,
didn't like it. But I love Paul Rudd.
Yeah,
I love Paul Rudd though as Ant-Man. But yeah, that's why it's a really unpopular opinion, but number 14.
You guys are killing me, man. Oh my gosh, Tyler, I was totally on board except for number 14. Then you killed me. Oh man.
Wait till you hear my 13, man.
Oh yeah, wait till you hear
I'm
my
not
13.
looking forward to that. But for you two, wait till you hear my number 17 and my 14. I'm about to get back at you.
God, I already know what it is. It's gonna hurt me.
Yeah, I know you do. We have regular conversations about this. All right. So kicking this thing off strong at number 17, we have Iron Man 3.
Boo.
Yep,
I gotta go.
Iron Man 3.
See ya.
I hate this film so much. It's weird because you look at it and you're like, this is a great Shane Black movie. And it's not a great Iron Man movie. It's a great Shane Black movie if he were to make us some random technological story about a guy named Tony Stark or whatever the hell his name is and this whole stuff. I mean, it is actually Tony Stark the movie. And if you take everything you know about Iron Man and you throw it out, then it's great. But unfortunately, that's not what this is. This is an Iron Man movie. And it's really depressing because I think the first half of this film is truly great. It's really, really great. Then you get to that twist everyone blames the twist of the Mandarin for the reason that they hate this movie. It's one of the reasons I hate it, but it's not the only reason. I just felt that was such a slap in the face to what the villain of the Mandarin actually is. The Mandarin is supposed to be Iron Man's arch nemesis. He's supposed to be the ultimate like his Green Goblin to Tony Stark's Spider-Man. It's and that's not the case, and it really is ruined there. And unfortunately, Aldrich Killian, I did not like at all, and the way they kind of brought him in as the real villain, I didn't like it. I also didn't like the fact that you never saw him as Iron Man in the film, and when you did see Iron Man, it was disposable suits that were breaking like instantly. It was really just I really didn't like it for that stuff. And then the stuff at the end where he gets the shard taken out of his chest. I mean, like, if he could have had that surgery done, why didn't he do it in the first one? And then also, I think it goes against everything they've established for the character in the original Iron Man movie, which really just kind of didn't sit well with me. I could dive into it a lot more, but unfortunately, I didn't like that. This movie is such a letdown, because when you look at the trailers and you look at the movie that was promised, that's not what we got. And there's another movie on that list that I feel the same about, but less so than on this one. So, yeah, that's my whole thought. Those are my thoughts on Iron Man 3. If you want to hear me rage about it a little bit more, you can watch our first MCU ranking video that I did last year with Owen. I think I spent a little bit more time on that one. But anyways.
What a shame.
Moving on to number
What an absolute
16.
Shame.
No.
What a terrible
Number
way to start off
16.
this list.
No, it's a great way. Number 16 is Thor: The Dark World, much for the same reasons that you guys said. I actually did catch this one on FX last night and got a little refresher on it. And yeah, I mean, it's not as bad as I remembered. And a lot of that comes from Loki, the rage that you see him feel when Frida is killed, and all this stuff. And I actually do like the beginning of it. They're setting it up to be a lot darker, to be kind of like this Lord of the Rings-esque fantasy type stuff. I really dug that. Unfortunately, they don't follow through with it. We get one of the worst villains in the MCU with Malekith, just absolutely disposable. A lot of misplaced humor in here that really ruins the film. Kat Dennings is unbearable. I can't stand her in this movie. And ultimately, the final battle, you don't feel anything, because it's just like there are no stakes involved. It's just typical world destruction ending stuff. And yeah, it's a very forgettable movie. It's not awful. You can watch it and enjoy it. Really, for developing Loki, not so much Thor. I don't think Thor gets a lot of development in this movie at all, actually. But it's not great. It's really probably one of the one of the weakest films in the MCU. Hence why it's on all of our bottom half of our list. So yes, moving on to number 15, and that is Iron Man 2. Much for the same reasons that you guys said. I loved the premise of doing the Demon in a Bottle storyline, and unfortunately, because they didn't do that, we got something that wasn't as compelling.
You're hot.
Here's the thing with Iron Man 2. Oh, I know. I said, ooh, alcohol, ooh. The thing with Iron Man 2 is it's a fine, disposable action movie to just throw on in the background while you're doing whatever. It really is. And Robert Downey Jr. is great in this. And I actually have to say the saving grace for this film is Sam Rockwell as Justin Hammer.
I would agree with that.
I wish that he was the main villain, and they would have spent more time developing him and his competition with Stark, because that would have been a much different villain than what we've seen before. And especially since he's like actually not fighting him, it's more of like a corporate battle. That would have been really, really interesting. But we get introduced to the Black Widow in here. That's fine. There's a lot of Avengers setup in this movie, which is just
the whole movie.
Everything in this film is very surface level. They present great ideas. They don't dive too deep into they don't delve too deep into them. And unfortunately, it's just a very bland film. Mickey Rourke is. What are you doing in this movie? He's just. I want my bird. That's just.
I want my bird.
That's all he says for like. I swear to God, like a good majority of this film.
What believable, great villain motivation. He wants his damn bird.
Right.
Back.
I believe he wants his bird. It's just, it's fine. But anyways, now on to another controversial pick. My number 14 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. This movie, this movie just, it's not my cup of tea. It really isn't. And here's the thing that I will say first, because this movie does do a lot of things right. Unfortunately, the things it doesn't do right is why it's so low on my list. incredible character development. I think the Guardians have become some of the most fleshed out characters in the MCU. We finally have a fantastic villain with ego. Unfortunately, he doesn't really reach that level of greatness until the very end, but and regardless, he's a great villain. There's some great action scenes in here. There's some great interactions. I love the pairing ideas. I thought it was great. That whole thing was cool. Unfortunately, the movie suffers a little bit of an identity crisis. It doesn't know what kind of film it's trying to be. Is it trying to be a father and son film? Is it trying to be this dark character study on Yondu or whatever like that? Is it trying to be this part comedy and such like that? And it does all of those things, but they don't mesh very well together at all. And I find the movie to be really mean-spirited. Actually, upon rewatch, I was just like, this is really dark, and it's not humor or incidents that are really sitting well with me. I also find it to meander quite a bit. The movie doesn't go anywhere for like the first half of the film. And I will say the ending to this movie is incredible. It's fantastic. If the rest of the movie had been as good as the ending, we might be talking about a higher placement here, maybe in the top 5 or something like that. But unfortunately, they use these gold people as a plot device to push them around, and it doesn't work. And then the other thing I don't like is that there's a lot of just like, haha, look at me, I'm making a joke. They think their jokes are a lot funnier than they are, and unfortunately, it gets really old and really annoying really fast, and it's just stuff that I didn't like, and it's unfortunate because, like I said, the movie does do a lot of things right. We get great character moments, great development, a great villain at the end, but all of it for me is overshadowed by these things that just bog it down, and that's why Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is at number 14.
Ooh.
Come at me, guys.
Oh boy, there's some problems with that.
Did you start with 1 through 4 or 17 through 14?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Like, it's a little odd.
Hey, you know what? You guys are about to break my hopes and dreams
That's
here in a few
true.
minutes.
That
so
is true.
Yeah,
it's only natural that I do it first. But anyways, okay, Brody, what is your 13 through 10?
13 through 10. Okay, let the heartbreaking begin. So number 13 is Ant-Man, which for many of the same reasons. It's honestly, I put it a little above Doctor Strange because I find it a little less generic than Doctor Strange. I think I think it's purely because of Paul Rudd, to be honest. I like Paul Rudd as a leading man. I think he does a good job. And I also really like oh my god, every time I try to remember his name,
Michael Douglas.
I always want to say Kirk Douglas, and it like messes me up. But anyway, yeah, no, Michael Douglas is great, and a supporting role. Evangeline Lilly is also great. So I think the cast really boosts this a little bit, but it is still a lot like Doctor Strange, just a sort of run-of-the-mill sort of, we needed to establish this character, so let's make Iron Man again. But this time it's like a con artist who like a thief who steals the Iron Man suit and then
it's a heist film.
Yeah, but I mean, is it really though? It's just like I think this is kind of another one of those problems I have with the MCU in general, where the MCU sort of dresses up a normal superhero movie in like genre conventions and says it's a different genre, but it's not. It's a superhero movie that has heist elements in it, you know what I mean? And that's fine, but I think the movie's a little too proud of itself for being a heist movie when it's not really.
It's a Disney heist movie.
Hey,
yes,
come on.
I mean, for sure, yeah. And yeah, I think I agree completely with your point about Michael Pena as well. He's a great actor. I didn't think he was that funny in this movie, but everyone was raving about him. He did the same shtick the whole movie, and it was like,
I mean, I'll give you that. Like he was funny, but I mean, like, and I thought the scenes were like pretty different, you know, and I liked that whole thing. But I mean, yeah, he wasn't like laugh your ass off hysterical. There are definitely like funnier moments.
And then on top of that, Corey Stoll was so cartoonishly like just bad.
Yes.
Like, and I love him.
But that's part of the charm of the character.
But at the same time, it's like they were going for this like, oh, he's a ruthless businessman. And in his first scene, he shrinks a man and squashes him, and it makes no sense. And it's so silly. He like wipes him off the bottom of his shoe or something. It's like, I can't remember what he does. He wipes him up with the paper towel and flushes him down the toilet. And it's just like, this is, first of all, that makes no sense for your plot because you need the board members. Second of all, he just like that was so like mustache twirling villainy. He was like, dude, you're in a bathroom. Like this is not menacing at all. It's just really lame. I don't know. There's just a lot of moments like that, and at the end, he just goes like completely insane, and he's just like firing at random, and and it's just like this is just strange. It's just not well set up. And then, of course, the elephant in the room is the Edgar Wright stuff. I feel like there are elements of Edgar Wright in there that they retained, and it just hurts even more to see them because it's like this could have been so funny, so inventive, but what we got is still inventive, but it's just kind of like safe. It's safely creative. You know what I mean? They took some risks, but it's still like on the rails, and that bothers me a little bit. That's kind of like my larger problem with the MCU. But anyway, so Ant-Man, it's still an enjoyable movie, and I think the score is actually one of the best Marvel's done. It's like musical
Christoph
score.
Beck is
Like I actually really like the main theme he did. I hope he's back for Ant-Man and the Wasp because that's one of the best parts of this movie. But other than that, it's pretty run of the mill. Number 12, I don't know if this is controversial anymore. I feel like it was initially, but my number 12 is Avengers Age of Ultron.
Again, that's my number 13, so we're definitely on the same page.
Yeah, I don't hate this movie. Some people hate it, and I don't hate it. I just think there's a lot of missed opportunities in this because they had a lot of really interesting stuff to work with Ultron as a character. Just not even like disregarding like who he was in the comics, because I am a proponent of if you have a creative idea and it doesn't quite conform with the comics, I'm okay with you changing some stuff to make a better movie. Like, that's totally fine. But with Ultron, it was almost, they changed him for this, not for the sake of the narrative, but for the sake of, well, we need a funny guy, we need a funny villain to make jokes every 10 seconds, and it doesn't work, it doesn't make him more of a threat. I get that he was based on Tony Stark's personality, right? But if you're making a villain out of Tony Stark's personality, I don't think the jokes is what you should be taking away. I think you should be taking away that unbridled sense of arrogance, the ego that like sort of the righteousness that Tony Stark thinks he is always right. You take those negative elements of his personality and you exacerbate them to make a villain out of Tony Stark. You don't take the jokes. The jokes aren't like that's not the compelling part of making a shadow version of Tony Stark.
Right.
But so I thought that was a big missed opportunity, especially with they get a lot of shit for the subplot with Black Widow and the Hulk. I actually didn't mind that. I sort of got why they were together, why they were drawn to each other. But when you're dealing with people who are sort of troubled with this inner beast, for lack of a better word, they're troubled that they may be something irredeemable about them. When you've got that theme going in the movie, and then you have a villain that is literally based off of the inner demons of one of your main characters, and yet you don't explore that, it really it highlights the missed opportunity thematically there. I also think it's a lot less streamlined than the first Avengers movie, where they were setting up so many different things. Like they had like the setup for Thor Ragnarok, and they had a bunch of other stuff going on. They were like foreshadowing Hawkeye's death the entire movie to fake you out at the end, and like all this sort of stuff. It sort of felt like a waste of the movie's time and attention. But again, it's not a terrible movie. I still enjoy it. It just, I don't know, there's some problems with it that I think hold it back.
For sure.
Now, number 11 is where everyone gets mad at me, including Griffin.
Oh, I swear to God.
Number 11.
I swear to God, Brody.
Number 11 is Captain America: Civil War.
Fuck this.
Because
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, man. Captain America: Civil War is, the more I think about it, the less I like it. I think there are a lot of really good ideas in Civil War, but it doesn't ever commit to any one idea enough. And on all the ideas it does commit to are so out of character that it kind of, or not necessarily out of character, because I get when characters are under duress, they may make rash decisions, but it gets to the point where it is like cartoonishly like caricatures. Like Tony Stark goes so far in one direction and Cap goes in another so far in the other direction that it's like it's almost like it goes beyond my suspension of disbelief, where it's like there's no way that these two functioning adults would let this conflict get as far as it's gone and be manipulated by Zemo so fucking easily. Like, the way I see this movie is if you didn't like Batman versus Superman because they weren't friends yet and still didn't talk to each other, because that's pretty much what this is. Like, you've got two characters who are friends who should be able to talk this whole situation out, but never do. They always talk past each other in such convenient ways in order to like necessitate the rest of the movie. And like Cap acts so selfishly to protect Bucky and he hides behind his morality, and it's all very, very convenient considering the character he's been set up to be in all these past movies. I think Tony is a little more explainable because Tony's less of a righteous character, but I don't know. It just left a really bad taste in my mouth, just the direction they took this in. And it could have been such an interesting story. I think one of the other, like the main problem is the fact that it is Zemo orchestrating the whole thing. It makes the character seem very stupid. But yeah, I have plenty of problems with this movie, but I don't have enough time to get into it. So those are like my broad strokes. But again, it's not a bad movie. It's just a very confusing movie. I don't understand where they were going for with this. Like,
yeah,
but anyway,
sure. Whatever.
And I don't even know if I did a good job explaining my problem with it because I'm trying to be like succinct with it. But yeah,
it's okay. If they want to know your thoughts, they can go search you out on Twitter and get into a fight.
True.
With you. That's okay.
That is true. Come yes. at me. Come at me. Slide into my DMs. We'll fight about this. But anyway, yeah. So that's Civil War, and I know that's going to piss people off, and I probably didn't do a good enough job justifying it, but fuck it. It's my list. Number 10 is, and it's going to piss people off that I put this above Civil War, is Thor.
What the
Yeah. No, so I don't love Thor, and I don't think Thor is an amazing movie, and Civil War is a terrible movie. I just like Thor a little bit more because it is a more cohesive vision. I get what Thor was going for, and it's pretty consistent the whole way through. It's not amazing. There are some problems with it. I sort of forget most of it most of the time. I hadn't actually watched it for years until right before Ragnarok, but when I watched it again, I was sort of surprised by how much I sort of got into like Kenneth Branagh's vision. The whole Shakespearean aspect to it was great. All the Loki stuff that we see in the best parts of Dark World are really set up in the first Thor in a really, really interesting way.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Loki's such an interesting character because of this movie, I think. Even Thor, I mean, he's not exactly the most interesting character in the Marvel universe at this point, but he gets a little something to do. He has a little arc going on where he has to learn, to be less of a dick, essentially. And all that's cool, and it all works. Kat Dennings is less annoying than I remember in this movie.
She's really not that bad.
She gets super annoying in the second one, but in this first one, she's bearable. I still don't buy the Jane Foster relationship, but it's a little less on the nose because they are the two characters are thrust together because of circumstances. So I sort of get it, but it's not super believable. But yeah, no, the whole thing is still it's perfectly serviceable, and I think, in retrospect, I like it a lot more just because of how much of a Kenneth Branagh movie it is, considering how homogenized the rest of the MCU has sort of become. So I sort of appreciate it. Sure. I appreciate it for being its own thing. But yeah, it's still not great. So don't take this movie as like Brody says that Thor is the best movie ever. But anyway, yeah. So that's my 13 through 10. All
right. I mean, I completely disagree with you on a few of those, but that's okay. You know what? It's your list. I'll let you have it. All right, Tyler, what's your 13 through 10?
All right, so 13 is Captain America: The First Avenger.
Oh!
Yeah. Now I've seen this movie.
You guys are breaking my heart. Oh. You actually are killing me.
I'm sorry, man. I've seen the movie once, and that was enough for me.
Oh, wow.
I did like the movie, but just whenever I think of it, I just think dull, just kind of dull.
Okay.
And it's just not really. To me, it was just not really memorable. I liked, it's kind of cool seeing Chris Evans, become Captain America, starting off as a little CGI skinny boy, and becoming Captain America. It's cool and all, but it's just forgettable, man. Now I did see an early screening of this movie back when it came out, and the theater I was at was really bad. like the screen was really dark and the sound was awful. So maybe that had something to do with it. But
You know, I'm gonna bet a lot of money that that's why you don't like the movie as much as you do.
it could be. But and I also remember I liked Hugo Weaving as Red Skull, but like the performance was good, but I don't know. He's just not one of my favorite villains. I think Wonder Woman was kind of the better version of Captain America, the first Avenger. But I will say the villain in Wonder Woman kind of reminded me of Red Skull, and I didn't like the Wonder Woman villain too much. But that's why it comes in number 13. I will be rewatching that one soon, though.
Good. I hope you do.
Yeah. So coming in at number 12 is Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Oh, you son of a bitch!
The worst Spider-Man movie to date.
Oh my!
No, I'm kidding. I don't know if it's the worst Spider-Man movie.
You guys are literally stabbing daggers through me right now.
Shit. I love the controversy of this. This is like amazing.
Yeah. So Tom Holland is he's a good Spider-Man, but it just bothers me. Toby, he's my favorite Spider-Man, and
Toby.
I don't like seeing Spider-Man be young. I know he's like that in the comics, but it's not called Spider-Boy. It's Spider-Man.
That's part of the ironic nature of the fact that he's called Spider-Man, though. Like, he's a boy trying to be a man, and he's like trying to juggle all the. You know, never mind. You could go ahead. Just go ahead.
No, it's okay. I'm definitely a controversial pick, but I like Michael Keaton in this movie. I like him a lot.
Yeah, he's great.
He's very good. He's like this movie would have been a lot lower, but I was thinking about him. I like him a lot. He's really good in this movie as the villain, and I really like the twist in the movie. I didn't see it coming in the halfway.
No, I didn't either. Yeah,
and it surprised me, and it kind of woke me up when I was watching the movie. And I was like, whoa, okay, so this is pretty interesting. And I also don't like his suit too much. It's all the high tech. It's like an Iron Man suit,
Yeah, I can understand.
I totally agree. Yeah,
but it's not a terrible movie. It ended up being better than I thought it would be because I had low expectations after Civil War. It just bothered me seeing Spider-Man that young, and so that's why that's number 12. Number 11 is Thor. For obvious,
okay, that's my number 11. So yeah,
for obvious reasons. It's not the best Marvel movie, but I don't think it's the worst. I actually kind of like this movie. I've only seen it a couple of times, but I kind of like the whole fish out of water thing. Thor being on Earth. I thought it was kind of entertaining. It's fun to watch. And Loki, he's good, but I didn't start loving him until the Avengers and Thor: The Dark World. But he's good in this movie, and I just thought I like this interesting. And number 10 is Iron Man, the first one.
Wow!
Oh, wow!
Wow!
Yeah. I love the first half of Iron Man. The prison, Tony Stark going to prison. It's awesome. That's what got me. I remember being. Man, I was like 13 or 12, I guess, when the trailer came out, and super stoked to see this. I mean, it looked awesome, and it was. It's a really good movie, but I just don't really like the second half as much as the first. I don't like Obadiah. What's his last name?
Yeah, Obadiah Stane.
Stane. Yeah, I think he's an okay villain. Again, he's just kind of forgettable. That's kind of an issue with the MCU movies. They don't really have memorable villains, and to me, he wasn't that memorable. And
that's fair.
But yeah, I like the first half a lot, and it's cool. Our introduction to Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man's good introduction, and Terrence Howard. I kind of like Don Cheadle more.
Oh,
I would agree. Yeah, I know Griffin doesn't.
I would disagree very much.
But Terrence is good in the movie. He's good. But
for sure.
Another unpopular opinion.
So that's your number 10 then?
Kind of another one.
Is that your number 10?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, well, that was, wow, what a controversy that is. Oh, dear me. All right, well, there's going to be a little bit of overlap. My number 13 is Avengers Age of Ultron, much for what you said, Brody. There's a lot of promise in this film. If you look at the trailer and then you look at the end product we got, man, if we only got the movie that the trailer promised, that would have been so dark, would have been intense, a lot of great character moments. Unfortunately, we don't get that. We get a villain who is just cracking jokes all the time. A total waste of James Spader's talent, unfortunately, because I really liked him voicing Ultron. I mean, it was it's really a shame.
He has such a cruel voice, and so
he does.
Like, it is so
yeah.
much like malice in the way he says stuff, but he never gets
Yeah.
to say anything malicious. He always makes jokes, so it's a real waste of that.
Right, and that's my big problem with a lot of this movie is that a lot of it is just misplaced humor. A lot of jokes just kind of like thrown in here, undercutting the emotional integrity of a scene to throw in a cheap joke. The first thing that comes to mind is when Quicksilver gets killed. Then they cut to Ultron, and the Hulk just like throws him out of a plane, completely just like does a disservice to the death that just occurred and to Hawkeye's reaction. It was really just horrible.
Especially
there are
since they
some
spent
good
the
things to it,
entire
though.
movie like setting that up and like trying to fake us out,
Yeah.
and they immediately just jettisoned that and went to just like another joke.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of this movie is kind of like dull. There isn't a whole. It gets a little boring at some points. But then also the things I do like though are the Vision, Scarlet Witch, and Quicksilver. I think all three of them are great.
They're great, yeah.
The next thing, and probably the biggest pro I have with this movie, is everything that happens on the farm. That is where we get some incredible character development, not only from Hawkeye, but from Natasha and Bruce. Their understanding where they're coming from and why they're attracted to one another. We get to see the beginnings of Civil War with Tony and Cap kind of going at it with their ideology about, Tony's creation of Ultron, which, by the way, was just very dumb and irresponsible of him. I can't even believe that he really went through with that. And then that's another thing. The creation of Ultron, he just turned evil like that. It was innately evil. Really? Yeah. Okay, that's whatever. But going back to the farm, I think that is hands down the best part of the entire movie.
Dude, it's fantastic.
It really, really is. Unfortunately, the rest of the movie isn't as good, and the Avengers aren't developed more in the movie. I mean, they are in that scene, but like on the whole, I feel like the progression isn't necessarily there. And the movie's it's fine. It's fine. Anyway, so that's why that's a number 13.
It's like character lines rather than character arcs. It just sort of, they go from point A to point B without any real sort of progression. They just sort of get there.
Yeah, for sure. So my number 12 is The Incredible Hulk. Now, I actually really like this movie. I think there's a lot to like in the movie. Unfortunately, it just, like you guys mentioned, it does feel a little out of place. It feels like the early 2000s superhero tinge still, in there. I do like Edward Norton as Bruce Banner. I do like William Hurt as General Ross, and I love Tim Roth as Emil Blonsky, or whatever the hell his name is, the Abomination. The other thing that I really love is that brawl in Harlem between the Hulk and the Abomination. I think that's an awesome monster mash, like kind of fight scene that you would expect in what is essentially a monster movie. I love that they made Bruce Banner a fugitive in this. They didn't go over the origin story again. They kind of brush over it in the opening credits. I thought that was a great way to go with this. And then, there are some just nice little character moments that happen throughout. But on the whole, I'm not as drawn to rewatch this one. I have to be in the mood for it, but when I do put it on, I know I'm guaranteed for a good time. It's just when you compare it to the rest of the films in the MCU, it does get lost a little bit. So that's why that's at number 12. Mm-hmm. Number 11, like I mentioned, is Thor. And now I also rewatched this recently for Thor Ragnarok, and it was a breath of fresh air. I was very delighted in what I got. I think much like Taika Waititi's fingerprints are all over Thor Ragnarok, Kenneth Branagh's fingerprints are all over this first Thor, and I really commend him for bringing a Shakespearean-esque kind of outlook on the entire story. Because if you look at the story just for face value, not necessarily the locations, it is a very Shakespearean coming-of-age story, which is exactly what you would want from Thor. I actually did buy into his relationship with Jane Foster because he recognizes that she's onto something, and he's here to help her, finish what she started. And I understand how they're able to bond over that. That fireside chat is actually really quite delightful. I like it a lot. That's where I feel their romance really start to blossom. I think a lot of the fish out of water humor works for me in here on a lot of levels. But then the stuff in Asgard is fantastic. The battle, the first battle on Jotunheim is great. My only complaint is that I wish there was more of it. I think they do spend a little bit too much time down on Earth.
Yeah, no,
and unfortunately, it's you wanted to see more of Asgard because it was a place we haven't seen before.
Dutch angles.
Yes,
Dutch angles.
I was
Oh my
literally about
God.
to mention that. The thing I love about Thor are Kenneth Branagh's use of canted angles. I think they're just brilliantly used. It's really original and different to see in this kind of a movie. And I loved Thor's characterization in this film. And seeing his progression through the Thor movies makes absolutely no sense. But I think out of all of the interpretations of Thor, this one sticks with me a little bit. I mean, I really like what he did in Ragnarok, and we'll get to that a little bit later, but this one feels the truest to the character, and all around, I just think it's a really enjoyable Shakespearean fantasy film that Kenneth Branagh does a great job of directing.
Yeah, and also, and real quick too, I also got to give props to the MCU for taking a chance on a character like this.
I completely
With Thor,
agree.
yeah, for sure.
This movie should have been a lot worse than what it was.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, and you know,
it's a really good movie, but I mean, it should have been awful.
It should have been good.
Yeah, on paper, Thor, it doesn't work. And you could say the same thing for my number 10, and that is Doctor Strange. On paper, this is a movie that sounds just like a little too weird to appeal to a mainstream audience.
If only it was too weird.
Right.
I wish it was too weird.
I know you do. And I think it worked. You know, I think that this is when I originally saw this film, I liked it a lot more than I did. I think my only issue with it is I'm really not drawn to rewatch it. I also think that this is another film that it suffers incredibly from misplaced humor, from undercutting the emotionality of a scene to throw in a cheap joke. You throw in the cape, the little cape wiping the tears from his face. I think that is the perfect example of the stupid stuff, the Beyonce joke.
That's the poster child for like the MCU's humor is that fucking cape.
It is. It really is, and it's a shame. I understand the cape's supposed to have a mind of its own, but they didn't use it the right way.
It has the mind of an idiot.
Yeah. Other than that, I think a lot of my issues are the fact that we don't see Stephen Strange be Stephen Strange enough. They kind of rush through his characterization. They're just kind of like, oh, here's Stephen Strange. He's the greatest surgeon in the history of surgeons, and now he's an asshole and he has no hands.
Yeah, car crash.
That's it. That's all we get of Stephen Strange, and unfortunately, I would have liked to have seen more of his character so that when they went through the progression of him being more humble, it would have worked a little bit more. I also wish that they would have spent a little bit more time on him training. I understand he has a photographic memory, but everything felt a little bit rushed to him becoming Doctor Strange. Now, the visuals in this film are insane. I mean, it's like Inception on steroids, and I love it. Seeing this film in IMAX was a great experience. And I also commend them on taking a risk with Scott Derrickson, a horror director who really just like went out there, gave us, for the most part, I will say, something original. I love Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange. I think he's going to become synonymous with the character, much like RDJ with Tony Stark. And overall, the way that the villain was defeated was brilliant. He used his wits and his intelligence to defeat the villain. And Stephen Strange, who's arguably the most intelligent out of all of the MCU characters thus far, it makes perfect sense. So there's a lot to like in this movie, but unfortunately, there's some silliness that bogs it down. And I just appreciate it for daring to do something different for the most part. So that is my 13 through 10. All right, Brody, kicking it back to you, 9 through 4.
Excellent. I just realized when I was talking about Civil War, I got so bogged down in the characters. I didn't even mention that I hate the airport fight. And all that stuff. So
you just had to bring that up. You couldn't let it go. Just no, stop it. No, we're moving away. Go to your number 9.
And the fact that the cinematography looks like it was all shot on a green screen for a TV show. But anyway, so number 9. Actually, this is going to be controversial. I don't. It's not number 9 because I dislike it. I think we're in the territory now where I like all of these movies.
Yeah, for sure.
But they just I like them less. Number 9 is Guardians of the Galaxy. Number 1.
Holy shit, that's my number 9.
Oh, right.
That's my number 9.
The more I think about Guardians of the Galaxy, it's not that I dislike it. It's just it doesn't have the same magic that I think it had the first time I watched it.
I agree. I completely agree. Yes.
Yeah, and so I think I don't know. There's nothing wrong with it. I just think the characters are very broadly drawn, and they don't. Other than the super obvious sort of change that they all have to go through to work as a team, nothing else really interesting happens with them. Ronan is Malekith levels of uncompelling as a villain. He smashes someone's skull in the first scene, so you know he's bad. And then and then the rest of the movie, I did like that they kept him deadpan the entire time. That was nice, a nice change of pace considering they've tried to make like villains like Ultron a joke.
Right.
So I did appreciate that. The bit that sticks out to me the most, and I hate picking apart a movie based on one scene, but I think this is kind of emblematic of why I've grown less affectionate towards this movie as time has gone on. The end, the dance off at the end. Really,
that bugs me too.
Really, it bugs me. It bugged me the first time I saw it, but I let it slide. But the more I watch it, it sort of becomes like an emblematic of all of my sort of issues with the movie. It's so wacky for the sake of being wacky. Like, I don't care how fun of a character Star-Lord is. I don't buy him suddenly bursting out into song to distract Ronan at the very end. And I just something about it didn't click. And it's like, this is how you're going to end the movie. Like, you don't have to be super. Yeah, you don't have to be super dramatic. You don't have to do something like overly serious or anything.
Right.
Because clearly the whole movie wasn't trying to be too serious, but I don't know, just something about that just didn't click. And there are some parts of the movie that just don't stand out to me. Like, I think a lot of the middle of the movie sort of just is like, I don't really remember what happens, to be honest. Like right before they meet the Collector, I can't really in my brain put together what happens. I know like he listens to music with Gamora for a second and Rocket gets into an argument, but it's like, I don't know, it just all feels very, it could be in any order, to be honest. It's still a great movie though. Like I shouldn't be ragging on it because it's number 9. It's not like it's 17. It is a fun movie. The music is great, and it sort of established this new trend in Hollywood of putting a pop song in every fucking second of your movie. But it works in this one. I think in terms of visual style, James Gunn is one of the more aesthetically pleasing filmmakers working in the MCU.
A lot of colors.
His films look like real movies, which is nice. And he definitely is a very talented director and a talented writer. There are some parts that don't fully click on repeat viewings. I think it has like diminishing returns. But the first time I watched it, I was blown away. It was an absolute joy. So I can't give it too much hate.
For sure.
I realized every time I talk about these movies, I always start with the negatives, which is probably indicative of how I feel about the MCU as a general thought. But jeez. I do genuinely like Guardians of the Galaxy. Anyway, number 8 is Spider-Man Homecoming. It's another one of those things where it has diminishing returns. The first time I watched it, I was like, this is pretty good. Because I liked Tom Holland and I really liked Michael Keaton as the Vulture. And I was so starved for a good villain in these Marvel movies. So that when Michael Keaton came along, I was like, oh, great. This is like exactly what I wanted. I wanted a villain with motivation. I wanted a villain who was, played straight and just like did bad things. And he did. And he wasn't cartoonish and his plot wasn't like destroy the world. He was just stealing stuff. So all of that I really, really loved. But then, like, I don't know, some parts of like the high school element of it didn't really stick for me. And this is mainly comes down to what I value in the character. And then I think the same Raimi movies nailed that this movie didn't, is to me, when I read Spider-Man as a kid, Spider-Man was like a soap opera, right? Like, it's one of those things where every month I would get a new like issue of Spider-Man just to see where my favorite characters were at. It wasn't necessarily about a big fight or a big villain of the week or whatever. It was just sort of to see like, is like Peter making his rent payment? Is he and MJ having a fight? Like it's literally like a soap opera. And that's what the Sam Raimi movies nailed. Every movie was like a new episode of a soap opera where we start with the opening credits and they give you like a little catch up on what happened last time. And then you've got a bunch of drama with Peter and he's like, oh, he's got to pay rent to Mr. Dokovich or whatever his name is. And he's fighting with MJ and oh no, he's got like schoolwork and it all felt like exactly what I used to read in Spider-Man as a kid. And this one just, they went for a John Hughes vibe and I get it. And it was really well done. But that doesn't feel like Spider-Man to me. It feels like it's Spider-Man it feels like it definitely like conforms with like that Ultimate Spider-Man. But that wasn't really, I was already kind of moving on from reading Spider-Man at that point when those came about.
Wow, dude,
So,
Ultimate is like my favorite iteration. Of
maybe that's why you like Homecoming a lot better than I do. I don't like how connected Homecoming is to the rest of the MCU. I think Spider-Man as a character works better when he is more self-contained. Obviously, he belongs in a larger universe.
Yeah,
and
that's
he dabbles
understandable.
into the rest of the Marvel universe. But then when he comes back to his own titles, he is kind of just his own thing. And I didn't like how much like Tony Stark was giving him stuff. Like, and yeah, he broke the rules and messed with the costume. But he was given a lot of the stuff instead of really having to do it himself, and struggle with the fact that he has so much responsibility. You know what I mean? That's part of the package with Spider-Man, and I think that was lacking. I still love Tom Holland as Spider-Man. I think I like him as an actor for Spider-Man better than I like Tobey Maguire. But I love the movie that Tobey Maguire was in. I love the Peter Parker that he played rather than his performance specifically.
Sure.
So yeah, Spider-Man Homecoming is still good, but I think the more I watch it, the more it doesn't feel like my Spider-Man. And maybe it's someone else's Spider-Man, but that's fine. I'm not going to be an old man and be grumpy about it. But
I also don't like the title Spider-Man Homecoming.
It is a little weird because the Homecoming is kind of like this one thing that happens at the end.
No, I just thought it was kind of a weird title for the movie.
Yeah,
it's a little odd.
It's fine.
Yeah, but overall, it's still a good movie, and I still really like Tom Holland. The more I think about it, the less I want to watch it again. I can just go watch Spider-Man 2, and that's fine. I mean, anyway, I'm not going to linger on this. Number 7 is actually something that's gone up a little bit since I thought about this list, but it's probably lower than it is on most other people's lists still. And number 7 is The Avengers.
Holy shit, Brody, we're on the same page here, man. 9 and 7, we're spot on.
Oh my God, we're just syncing up. Doing too many podcasts together.
I know.
But no, so basically, The Avengers is. Like the first time I watched The Avengers, it really was like everyone always talks about how it was this massive event, but it really was like everyone in my school talked about it. It was like the biggest fucking deal in the world. And then it came out and it was great. It was really, really fun. Great characters, like all the characterizations were they fit with the rest of the movies we'd seen so far. It was all really, really cool. I love the music. Alan Silvestri's Avengers theme is
great, man.
Possibly the best piece of music in the MCU. It's amazing. All of that stuff is great. On repeat viewings, there are problems with the movie. It kind of is about nothing for a long time, where like the team comes together just because we've been setting it up, and then in Loki, obviously Loki's the inciting incident in this case, but I don't know. It all just felt like kind of, when you rewatch it, it kind of feels like, oh, this is kind of arbitrary. Some of the stuff on the helicarrier kind of drags. I love the character moments on the helicarrier, but there is a bit of a narrative lull where like nothing is happening, where they're just sort of waiting for Loki, I guess, to say something. And so I don't know. There are problems with it on repeat viewings, but I watched it again like last night in anticipation for this, and I guess because I haven't watched it in so long, I found the magic again, and I really, really enjoyed it, and I really love.
I think that's the key. Yeah. You can't watch it too close together. You have to watch it like once every while,
Yeah, and I think it helps to like sort of throw back to. There is a lot of nostalgia attached to this movie, and it always is going to be.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it's not perfect, but it's really, really great, and so. Number 7. Number 6, this is actually fairly recent, so I'm not 100% sure if it'll stay here. Number 6 is Thor Ragnarok.
Wow.
So I've seen it twice already. I quite like it. I think it is another one of those breaths of fresh air in the MCU where like after Doctor Strange and Ant-Man and Age of Ultron and all these sort of Civil War, these movies I didn't really dig coming out. This is really nice. This is like, it felt really removed from the MCU in terms of like, I mean, I shouldn't say that. It feels removed from the MCU in terms of like there is no setups. But it is also like the first Marvel movie I've seen, maybe except for Homecoming, that really takes advantage of being a part of a shared universe. And I think because there's nothing, it's become a bit of a dirty word to say like these MCU movies rely on each other, but some of them have to in some ways, as long as it's not like for the sake of like sort of like remember this. In Thor Ragnarok, it was good because Thor is kind of one of those characters that would go around boasting about his past exploits. Like, remember when we fought robots and remember when we did this? So it kind of works when he would like do that. And having he and Hulk interact given their history in the previous movies, I think that works. So I think it's definitely rooted in the MCU, but it's not reliant on the MCU. The whole story itself is very self-contained. The visuals, I think this is one of the more like pretty looking MCU movies.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to get to this when I talk about it, but it honestly feels like there's a lot of Jack Kirby influence.
There really is, yeah. And I think like they dabbled with that in Doctor Strange. They also dabbled with that in Guardians of the Galaxy. But I think this one, especially the opening scene, the bit where like my favorite shot in the movie, I think, is when Thor is flying and the dragon is following him, and it's like that profile of them flying.
Oh my God, yeah.
And it's the red background, and it's almost like a silhouette, and it looks like a painting, and it's like, that is gorgeous. That is maybe my favorite shot in any of these movies. It just looks like a comic book panel, and I was like, this is so great. Because I think that's one thing where like criticize them all you want, but the DC movies kind of look like comic books come to life. And the Marvel movies have kind of less so felt like that for me. But this one felt like a comic book come to life, and I loved that, and I really appreciated that. The music was great too, because the Marvel movies have had like sort of lame music, but they had this synth sound going on in Ragnarok whenever they were on Sakaar, and it just really, I mean, I love 80s synth, so that was probably tailored for me, but still the villain was kind of like weak. I think Hela is fine. I think Cate Blanchett gives a really great performance, and she really is like sort of really having fun with it, so that's nice. But nothing about her was sort of like compelling. I think there were inklings of compelling character motivation with like her whole conflict with Odin and how she was basically used as a child as a weapon, but they never really came back to that in the third act. I would have liked in the third act if she had used that to question Thor's allegiance with his father and maybe like done some more character stuff there. But they didn't, and it's fine. It works without it, but that would have made her a more compelling villain, in my opinion. But overall, really, really like Thor Ragnarok, even though I've only just seen it. Number 5 is, and I think this is going to be controversial given how high it is, especially for you, Griffin. But number 5 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Yeah. That is my number 5.
Hell yeah. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Oh, I knew it was going to be high on both your lists, but I'm surprised it's not higher, actually, to be honest with you.
Guardians of the Galaxy has some problems, and a lot of the problems you mentioned are, I will admit, are problems. There are problems with narrative thrust, I guess. There are moments in the movie where it's sort of like, it just sort of stops. But it's okay because those stops are jam-packed with character moments, and like all the stuff I think was missing from Guardians of the Galaxy is in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I wanted more character stuff, and they gave it to me in spades. Like we got an examination of, basically the whole movie feels like an examination on trauma, on characters with trauma, and you see that with Peter and his dad, and you see that with Rocket, obviously, and Yondu, and then you see that again with Gamora and Nebula, and it's just so interesting. It's so interesting to see actual character study going on in a Marvel movie that is also really funny. And I have a lot of problems with the way Marvel movies tend to place their jokes. I don't so much have a problem with the jokes themselves. It's just like they put them in really awkward spots that kill the tension. But for me, Guardians of the Galaxy, all the humor felt relevant to the characters. Like these sound like things, the characters that you have established in both movies, they would say that in this situation. So yeah, Drax might have been a bit obnoxious every now and then with his like constant like but
so funny though.
It was funny because it felt like something the character would do. You know what I mean? It felt organic.
Yeah.
Whereas like Doctor Strange making jokes doesn't feel organic. So yeah, it all felt really, really great to me. I love the visuals. This movie is gorgeous.
The gold people were awesome.
The gold people were awesome.
You stop
the
right
Sovereign,
there.
right? Okay, so yeah, they were a bit of a plot device, but it's fine. You can have plot devices in a movie.
I thought they were kind of funny too.
They were funny. I thought they were like they were just so like vain and self-obsessed that it was just like it was kind of
totally
funny
James
to watch
Gunn.
them. Exactly. It felt like a James Gunn movie, which I really, really appreciate that he's able to sort of do his own thing in this big Disney Marvel conglomerate. And the reason the Sovereign didn't bother me as a plot device, speaking to your point, Griffin, it doesn't bother me because it is directly tied to a mistake that Rocket made early on in the movie. And it was kind of like Rocket was escaping his problem the entire movie while the Sovereign sort of gave chase, right? And that was kind of, without getting like, super symbolic or metaphorical or anything like that, because I feel like it's a fairly surface level, like sort of bit of symbolism. But he was being chased by his demons the entire movie because of something he did that was selfish and cruel and unnecessary. And so when he finally confronts that, then like he and the rest of the team are able to sort of take care of this problem that he created in the third act. And
but that's the thing. The Sovereign aren't directly related to Rocket. I mean, they're directly related in the fact that he's the reason they're chasing after them. But
But I think that's all that's necessary. I think it worked on a character level. It informed the arc he was going through. And that's how I feel about everything in this movie. All the lulls in the plot kind of serve the characters a lot better. Whereas a movie like, I'm trying to think of another movie that has lulls in it. I mean, The Avengers kind of has lulls in it, but those also serve the character just to a lesser extent, I guess. And in my opinion anyway. But yeah, no, I really love Guardians of the Galaxy 2, and it's a movie that I feel like I'm going to have a long relationship with. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to have new feelings about it. I'm going to have new thoughts about it, and that's exciting. That doesn't usually happen with these Marvel movies, so I enjoy thinking about movies. So this is like a great movie for me anyway.
Sure.
So yeah, that's my 9 through 5.
All right.
No, that's controversial because Griffin agreed with me on a couple of them.
I did. I was actually surprised at number 9 and number 7. It's crazy stuff.
Oh
All right,
God.
Tyler, you're up,
Tyler,
man.
you agree with me, so that's like 9 through 5.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So my number 9. Now again, I too want to reiterate something. I mean, I've been talking about. I start off with the negatives too. Again, I like all of these movies. I mean, I get excited to go and watch them. No matter what. But 9 through 1 in particular, I mean, I really like all of these movies. And my number 9 is The Avengers, the first one.
Okay, so we're all around the same ballpark. Okay, that's interesting.
And I mean, we can all agree, man. I remember in 2012, like Brody was saying, this was an event, man. Everyone was just super stoked out of their mind, and even I was super excited. And I wasn't like the biggest MCU fan, but I was super excited to go and watch it. I didn't go and watch it like 5 or 6 times like some people, but it's good. But upon rewatching it, it's a little slow at the beginning. It takes a while to get into it.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Like Brody was saying, it's not really about anything. If you, kind of, it's just kind of.
I mean, yeah,
I don't know. Go ahead. What were you saying?
Oh no, I was just gonna say it is kind of like Loki's got a plot, and so they put him in a prison for the whole movie so that he can't do his plot until the third act.
Pretty much. But I mean, it's still like a crowd pleaser for sure. I mean, there's a lot of great action and cool seeing all the characters together. And I think that Marvel did it right. Everyone got their own standalone movie, and they did it right. Unlike DC, I kind of wish they would have followed this formula and did this with the Justice League. But it's a fun movie. I do want to rewatch it though because I haven't seen it in a long time, and I think I would like it a lot since I haven't seen it in probably like 2 or 3 years now.
Oh yeah, I recommend.
For sure.
That's the same with me, and I would definitely recommend like just taking a moment to yourself and watching it because it is fun after a while.
Yeah. So that's number 9. But my number 8 is kind of surprising. Going through the list again, it's the first Guardians of the Galaxy.
Hey,
dude, we are all like on the same page for this section. This is awesome.
Yeah, this ended up being pretty cool. But and now I love Guardians of the Galaxy. Again, this was another big movie that props to Marvel for taking a chance on it, because I thought this thing was going to be the biggest failure of 2014 when it was coming out. It sounded awful, and Chris Pratt, at the time, I just knew him from Parks and Rec, and I thought, what a weird casting choice. James Gunn, I've only seen
bold
Slither.
Choice, yeah,
really strange, but huge surprise. But rewatching it, again, there's just some. it's not as good as I really remember. And Guardians 2 did it better, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So that's just automatically puts it lower on the list. But yeah, fun movie. Love all of the characters. That's number 8. Number 7, Captain America: Civil War.
Yes.
All right, I'll respect the fact that it's in your top 10. That's
Yeah.
fine.
It was 11.
I do like this movie a lot. It's I do like it more than the first Avengers movie. I think just because I like the Russo brothers a lot. I like their film of their action and everything. But I just think it's such an it's very overhyped movie. Like people.
Yeah, oh yeah.
That's just why it's not any higher. And I do think it's a little bloated at times. I wish just with all of the Avengers, it does feel like another Avengers movie. And the airport scene, to me, it's. I know a lot of people that say it's like the best scene in any Marvel movie of all time. I highly disagree.
Same.
It's funny though. I do like
them.
the Ant-Man part. I thought that part's always funny, but again, it just looks really fake, digital, and glossy. But it is a good movie. I do like. I do like certain aspects of it. But number 6. Now I'm excited to talk about this one. I've been wanting to talk about it for a long time. Avengers: Age of Ultron.
Hey.
Yeah,
I love
you like this one.
movie
Yeah.
so much. It's so much. Just for everything y'all said. The farm scene is so good. Like it's so out of place in a good way.
Yeah.
In a good way. I mean that in such a good way.
Yeah.
I remember watching it for the first time and just being like blown away. I was like, wow, this is great. This totally feels out of place. It doesn't feel like it belongs in a MCU movie, and I thought that part was really well done.
For sure.
And for me, it's just there's a lot. It's more memorable. There's so many more memorable scenes, like the Hulkbuster scene.
Oh
It's
yeah,
awesome.
I forgot to mention that when I was talking about
Dude.
that. I love that scene.
Dude, it's so good, man. Every time I go in the Best Buy or entertainment store, they're always playing that scene on like their TV display. Like every time.
No, that's a good point. They do. Every time there's like Avengers on, it's usually this one and that scene.
Yeah.
That's so
And,
weird. I never thought about that.
and Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, they're awesome. I like I like Fox Quicksilver a little more, but I still like this Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, of course. Like I said, she's great.
She's great.
And
yeah.
I don't know. I just like the atmosphere and darker tone of this movie. I liked Ultron a lot. I thought he was great, a great villain, very memorable. Again, that's just that's really why I just love this movie. It's memorable and it's a movie I can rewatch and really never get tired of. So yeah,
sure.
And then number 5, as Brody said, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. He pretty much said everything that I feel about this movie. It's it's an indie movie disguised as a blockbuster. It's so good.
I don't know if I
love all the characterization. It made me love. I didn't really care for Yondu in the first one. I love Yondu. Yeah. I love him, but now we never get to see him again.
I'll give you that. Yeah.
Because that was a very emotional scene. I really liked.
That was very emotional. Yeah.
Great scene, sure. And then all the Kurt Russell stuff with Chris Pratt. I love that. I love that part where Chris Pratt realizes what Kurt Russell did to his mom. He's like, you did what? And he pulls his guns out. I thought that was great.
Yeah, he just goes full like blinded with rage.
Yeah, in this one
didn't
too.
Even mention ego. Oh my god.
Great. But in this one too, I feel like James Gunn had even more creative freedom on this movie than he did with the first one.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I think sometimes it was a good thing, and I think sometimes it was a bad thing. But
yeah, that's understandable. But I like that direction Marvel's going in because after Thor Ragnarok 2, it's looking like they're giving directors more freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
or at least it feels
absolutely.
like that. So yeah, that's my 9 through 5.
Okay, cool. All right, and going to my 9 through 5 now. Number 9, Guardians of the Galaxy. A lot of the same reasons that you guys said. I think, on rewatch, I don't enjoy it as much. This movie, weirdly enough, and a lot of you guys are going to hate me for making this comparison because some people like revere this movie I'm about to mention. It has the Deadpool effect for me, where it's not as enjoyable as it was the first time.
Yeah.
The jokes aren't as funny. I don't find myself laughing. The character moments are still there, and they're still great.
Yeah.
But it's just, I don't know, the diminishing returns on this one, it's not as much. But I do love the risks they took with it because it shouldn't have worked, and it did. The humor, for the most part, is fine. I love all the characters. Groot was fantastic in this movie. I actually love Groot more in this one than I did in Volume 2, even though Baby Groot was awesome in that opening. But yeah, all around, this was a blast. You feel James Gunn's presence throughout the movie. It's not overly James Gunn. It's the right amount of James Gunn, and I thought that's why this is a better one than the than Volume 2. It's just fun. It introduced us to the the galactic Marvel universe, and it was great. I love the use of the soundtrack. The soundtrack is almost as iconic as the movie now. And I really loved how the team came together in this. It was great. And actually the scene with the collector, Benicio del Toro, it was so weird, but I loved it, man. It was great.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's why that's a number 9. Number 8. Now this pains me to put this movie here because I adore this film.
Ooh.
I fucking love it. It's one of the ones that I always come back to and rewatch. But unfortunately, there's one thing about this movie that knocks it down so much. That's Captain America: The First Avenger.
Oh.
I revere this film. I think it's great. It does everything that I love about Wonder Woman, and you can go watch my review for Wonder Woman. Everything I love about that are the reasons that I love Captain America: The First Avenger. It's a breath of fresh air because they go full on into the 1940s. It does have that nice what do you call it? Like propaganda feel to it. Like the entire sequence where he's like going from city to city and they're singing like the really campy old Captain America song.
Oh
that is brilliant because that is exactly what happened during that time period. I love Chris Evans in the role of Captain America. Everyone was like, oh, it's just the Human Torch. He's just going to be playing Steve Rogers. There's so much subtlety and nuance to this character that I don't think Chris Evans gets enough character for playing. Now, he does it better in some of the movies I'm about to mention, but in this one, he really feels like a genuine human being, a moral hero, which is not something the MCU had before.
Oh my god. I forgot he's played the Human Torch. It's like he's so much Captain America now.
He is so far removed from that because he has now become synonymous with Captain America. I can't picture anyone else playing this character because of how great of a job that Chris Evans did. I also love the romance between him and Peggy Carter. I think that's the most authentic romance that we've seen in the entire MCU thus far. And you feel his loss at the very end when he's like, I had a date. That was the perfect way they could have ended this movie. It was so heartbreaking, emotional. He like comes out of the ice and he realizes everything he knew is gone. It's great. I love Hugo Weaving.
Like this is like a complete aside, but can you imagine if they had done that like ending line in a new MCU movie? I feel like it would have been like, I have a date.
It would have been a joke.
And then there would have been like a long pause, and then Nick Fury would have went, with who? And then it would have been like,
right. And then it would have ended. Yeah, I know. It's thank God this movie came out when it did. But anyways, shit. What was I gonna say? Do you remember what I was talking about? I totally lost my train
I will
of
say
thought.
your enthusiasm for the movie makes me want to watch it again.
You should go back to it. Oh, now I know what I was talking about. Hugo Weaving as the Red Skull, I actually find to be one of the best MCU villains. He's probably my second favorite villain. Or I'll say third favorite behind someone and then Loki. But anyways, I think it is a great job of hamming it up on screen and playing that stereotypical just like power hungry Nazi who's just like fueled to take over the world and stuff like that. It's great stuff. My only problem with the film is that it montages through all the action. I would have killed to have seen just like some of the great action set pieces that they montaged through played out in the fullest. And unfortunately, that's what people remember is the fact that it montages through some awesome scenes. And while it's great, it kind of works. It's just that's stuff that we wanted to see. We wanted to see Captain America in battle because they reference it so many other times in future MCU films. They talk about this battle, and like what he did for this sort of thing. But we never actually saw that in the first Avenger. We see his relationship with Bucky start to form there, but I don't think they spent enough time on it in this movie. And as a result, when he dies, I don't think it's as powerful, or when he quote unquote dies, when he falls off the train, I don't think it's as powerful as it could have been. They could have set that up a little bit better, but all those quibbles aside, I think this is an excellent film that doesn't get enough credit for what it did. But anyways, number 7 is The Avengers. I'm not going to talk about this too much because you guys already touched on all my issues with it. I love it. It was the event film. Great character moments. I think Whedon knew how to give everyone their time in the spotlight. It was perfect in that regard. And the Battle of New York is probably one of the best action sequences in a Marvel film, in a comic. You know what? I'll go out there and say it, in a comic book film to date, because it is just that iconic. Two things that I hate. One, Captain America's outfit is fucking awful in this movie. It's so weird, dude. But I can forgive that. The thing that I don't like about this film is that, well, actually, I'm sorry, there's three things. Sometimes I think Whedon's dialogue is a little too flowery for its own good, specifically a lot of the lines that come from Loki and such. And actually, it's gotten to a point where every time I watch it, I'm like, oh, okay. I mean,
you
it's just
Quim.
yeah, something like that. I mean, sure, Loki would probably say that, but it's also just, I don't know. It's elaborate and flowery for the sake of being elaborate.
I think a lot of his characters end up sounding like everyone's the smartass in the room. So
exactly, and that's one of the problems I have for it. But the other issue is that this movie just goes from 100 to like 10 like really quickly. Like the second they capture Loki and they're having all these like, you know, conversations on the helicarrier this film just goes woo, it becomes a snooze fest. And the reason why I like figured this out, because I didn't really catch on to it the first like several viewings of it, but every time I would turn it on and I would watch it at home, I would always fall asleep at that moment, and then I would wake up when the Hulk busts out, because that's when the movie picks back up again and becomes the Avengers. Unfortunately, that lull is just, it's too long and it's really boring. But anyways, that's why the Avengers is at number 7. My number 6 is Iron Man, and I love this film. It started off it kickstarted the MCU. No. Fuck you.
I think it was
I love this
3,
movie.
right.
You know, Robert Downey Jr. nails it as Tony Stark. You know, all the stuff that happens in the cave, and then my favorite line, you know, Tony Stark built this in a cave, like with a pile of scraps by Obadiah Stane, I think is freaking hilarious. But anyways, and then his relationship with Jensen, who, you know, ends up dying. That was a very emotional moment. But this movie is just badass. You know, it's just like a fucking fun time at the theater. Some of the action scenes aren't as good as the future movies, but that's just because it was an earlier film, I guess, and they didn't have them all planned out. But you know, it's just all around. I don't really have any complaints with this movie. It's just that I like other ones more. Yeah, Obadiah Stane is just a corporate greedy, you know, arms dealer or whatever. And is it generic? Sure, but the reason he actually works for me is Jeff Bridges' portrayal. I love the enthusiasm and the charisma that he brings to the role.
Yeah.
But anyways, Iron Man, just really solid outing. I love it made me really love the character of Tony Stark and Iron Man, and I mean there's just so much to love here. But that's why that's at number 6. And now number 5 is gonna blow your mind that this movie is this high. Number 5 is Ant-Man. I fucking love this movie. And I said
the
it,
original Iron Man, even though it rips off the original Iron Man.
Yeah, but
crazy.
here's the thing: Ant-Man is a heist film. So that automatically just kind of put it above Iron Man, simply because I loved the heist element. I thought Paul Rudd was perfect in the role. I loved Michael Douglas. The humor in this movie worked because they already established that it was going to basically be like a heist comedy, and they totally go all in on that. The part where he's fighting Falcon, I think, is hilarious. That's actually genuinely
It's one of my
funny.
least favorite parts of the movie.
No, I mean, was it unnecessary? Sure. Was it like, you know, world referencing for the sake of world referencing? Yes. But for me, I don't know. I just found it so dang enjoyable. Corey Stoll, I don't hate. He's hamming it up as the villain in this movie, and it's all because of like the Pym particle kind of messes with his mind, and so as the film progresses, you see him get more and more crazy, and I just found that to be more enjoyable. Evangeline Lilly is badass. I love her chemistry with not only Paul Rudd but Michael Douglas as well, and you really feel their relationship, like how tense it is, like the you know, the respect that she wants from him, but you know, he's too afraid to put her in these dire situations, and you see Paul Rudd kind of look at that and you know, take that into account when he interacts with his own daughter, which I found to be very, very powerful. You see his motivations clearly. You feel for him. You know he's a good guy who's just run into some bad situations, and so I think that's all, you know, very powerful stuff here. But anyways, Ant-Man is just a really fun film. for whatever reason, it is a breath of fresh air for me in the Marvel Cinematic Universe because it's fun. It's on a smaller scale and it works. There's not like any, world-ending things on this. The train battle is hilarious. I loved how he like sacrificed himself to go into the whatever the other
the quantum something.
Yeah, the quantum realm or whatever. I thought that was really well done. I don't know. This movie just worked for me on a lot of levels, and it's one that I actually come back and revisit a lot. So that's why that's at number 5. All right.
Oh, boy.
I know, controversial opinion here, but I really dig it. So, all right, Brody, 4 through 2. Can you do it?
And this will give away my 1 as well, so it'll be interesting. I think it might surprise you, Griffin, what my number 1 is.
I hope it does.
I don't think you're expecting it. But my number 4, and this is a lot higher than you two have it, is Captain America: The First Avenger.
I'm very happy that the movie is as high up on your list as it is because it deserves it.
Honest to God, this movie, in a similar way to something like Guardians of the Galaxy 2, where it felt like it was tailor-made for my sensibilities. Captain America: The First Avenger is exactly the kind of movie. I mean, my favorite movie of all time is Raiders of the Lost Ark, and this.
Oh my God! I was about to mention that this movie has that feel to it.
I mean, Joe Johnston, who directs it, he was on Raiders of the Lost Ark. I think he was a storyboard artist, or he was a stunt guy, or something. He second unit. He was something anyway on Raiders, and then he did The Rocketeer, which I also think, which I think is a little underrated, sort of little nugget, and then. This one obviously is it feels like a culmination of like the Raiders stuff he did, all the other Indiana Jones stuff he did, and the Rocketeer. And I just this movie it feels like exactly. It doesn't feel like it's riffing off of. It doesn't feel like, because a lot of these movies it's set in the 30s or whatever, or it's set in the 40s. This movie feels like it's riffing off of movies that were made in the 40s, which I think was the perfect approach. Because they did the smartest thing they could have done with Captain America, which is, obviously they couldn't have made his origin contemporary. It just doesn't. His character is so rooted in like that World War II era.
Sure.
And so setting it back then, smart. Also, doing kind of like a little meta thing where you tie in his real life history as a propaganda piece of propaganda, and making that part of the movie. Such a smart idea. Having that be the thing where he is used as piece of propaganda by the government, even though he's this like medical marvel, and then he gets sick of it and he goes out on it because he's a great guy, and he feels like he can be doing more to like for the war effort. He goes out and actually becomes a hero, the hero he's pretending to be, and it's just so great that everything about it feels like a 1940s adventure serial. And oh my God, I love the music. Alan Silvestri again doing amazing stuff.
It is, yeah.
Captain America's theme, I'm really disappointed it didn't come back in any later Captain America. I mean, he there's hints of it in Winter Soldier, but I love it so much. It embodies the character, it embodies his history and all that. Red Skull's a little generic, but I think he's the kind of character where it's okay to be generic because the type of movie that they're doing a 1940s serial, and in all these movies the Nazis are cartoonish, like evil, you know what I mean, mustache twirling villains, and so it makes sense that in a movie that's kind of riffing off that style, that the Red Skull would be the same kind of like, we're going to take a plane and we're going to bomb every city in America, and it's like, it's like, it's so cartoonish, but not to the point where it's like, oh, this is dumb and it has no stakes. It just sort of feels like
right.
It's like, again, I keep saying 1940s action serial, but that's what it is, and it's so satisfying.
You know what?
And the end of
Fuck it, Brody. Fuck it. Executive decision. Captain America: The First Avenger is now my number 5. That is executive decision. I'm moving that one up there.
And then also,
the more you talk about it, the more I think about it. I'm like, I fucking love this movie.
It's amazing. Everything, like his relationship with Stanley Tucci's character. They only had a couple scenes, but I bought it. I loved how he instilled some values into Steve and taught him the realities of the world didn't mean he had to be a cynical dick. I love his relationship with Tommy Lee Jones as the general. I love his relationship with Peggy. I think other than Tony and Pepper, this is the most believable relationship in the MCU. I think.
For sure.
They had such like chemistry, but it wasn't like, oh, I suddenly love you. It was just sort of, I believed that they liked each other, so that when Peggy saw him like being flirted with, she didn't like that, and Steve didn't like that maybe she was flirty with Tony's dad, with Howard Stark, and it all just like, it didn't feel like a lame love triangle. It just kind of felt like endearing. It was a very endearing kind of romance. And then at the end, it was heartbreaking when he like sort of was talking to her and the radio cuts out, and it's just like she didn't get to hear what he had to say, and it was just so oh my god, yeah, I love this movie. I've been talking about it too much, but it is exactly the kind of movie that I grew up loving. So
I know
props
completely.
to Captain America, the first Avenger. Number 3 is Iron Man, the first Iron Man.
Completely understandable. I get it.
This movie, I think, is because it's so unique. Not so much obviously in the MCU it is, but as a superhero movie, it is such a. I mean, obviously it has an improvisational tone because they kind of did improv a lot of the stuff. But I think that kind of works. It doesn't feel like at any point, because there's no really like real driving plot so much. But you're just sort of following Tony Stark as a character sort of changes, and you're so invested in this character because Robert Downey Jr. is so perfect in the role that you don't really care that there's no real plot until like the third act. I don't know. It just kind of works. I mean, there's stuff going on in the background the whole time, like with Obadiah Stane taking over the company and all that. But it's never. You don't really care that it's not like foregrounded too much, because you're enjoying watching this character study of this man who is trying to change his life after a life-threatening experience, and in that way, it kind of feels like the perfect movie for someone like Jon Favreau to do, because Jon Favreau doesn't do big action movies. He does kind of these smaller, quirkier, like indie movies. And so this kind of has that same mentality, that same like MO, and it's great. And then I think Obadiah Stane could have been. He's become a bit of a archetype in the MCU as like the big bad version of the good guy. You know, like Ironmonger is the evil Iron Man, but he was sort of the first to do it, so I can give it a pass. Like, it wasn't a cliche at this point. It was just sort of, that's who this character was, and all of this stuff with like trying to manipulate Tony into taking control of the company and all that sort of stuff, and sort of actively opposing the character growth that Tony is going through, all really worked for me. It was all really, really cohesive and great. Number 2, and this will give away what my number 1 is, but at the same time, it's a toss up between the two of these for me. But ultimately, when I came to like sort of just thinking about, I guess the movie that I have more of a, I don't know. And even now I'm second guessing it the way I think about it.
Don't, just go for it. Just go for it.
Okay, so my number 2, and this is gonna, oh my God. This has changed several times while we've been filming this, by the way. My number 2 is Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
I knew it. I knew it.
It was the other way around for the longest time in like doing this list. But the more I think about it,
you son of a
these two
whore.
movies I love so much, and I have such a relationship with. I keep saying that, but I love having relationships with movies. I love going back and rewatching movies and finding new things to like and new things to think about. And these two movies both give me that. I think Captain America: Winter Soldier is a perfect sequel for the first movie. It takes all of the elements that I loved about the first movie, like Captain America as a character, and puts them in a completely new situation. Now we've got this idealistic World War II vet thrust into the murky, kind of morally gray world that we live in. And they did a really good job of sort of like playing up, well, S.H.I.E.L.D. isn't exactly, they're the good guys, but they don't exactly always do good guy stuff, you know what I mean? They still surveil people, all this sort of stuff. It's really, really interesting. And Nick Fury's a great counterbalance, because Nick Fury's kind of this like Vietnam era kind of soldier, where he has a similar sort of outlook on like being a hero, but he is a little more cynical because of the things that, you know, that embody the Vietnam War and other wars like the Iraq War and stuff like that. So thought that was a really, really interesting route to take it. I love Falcon. I thought he was a great character to throw in there too, because he and Steve are both vets and they both get it. I love all the stuff with Peggy. That was heartbreaking, that scene with Peggy.
Yeah, dude. Oh my god.
Like there was just, again, and I'm glad they didn't throw another romance into this movie. And that's another thing that bothered me about Civil War. They threw in that whole, like, I know in the comics he gets with her, but it's just kind of weird given how much he was so in love with Peggy. You know what I mean? Like going after her niece or whatever. But
it was kind of like the Vertigo effect, though. You know?
Yeah, but it's just kind of gross. It's given how much I was made to care about him and Peggy. But so all that stuff with Peggy was great. I love the stuff with Bucky. I agree. The first movie, the only problem I really have with it is that and this is like a lack of sort of knowing where the series was going at this point, or how far it would go rather. But they said they didn't really set up too much of Bucky stuff. But the little flashback we got, I thought really like did a good job of like sort of filling in a lot of the blanks for me with their relationship. I bought it. I love that the end of the fight was basically Cap refusing to fight. I thought that was the perfect Cap thing to do. And I wish he had done something similar in Civil War. But he didn't because he's a dick in Civil War. But no, but in this movie, I just love all this stuff with Bucky. I thought that was great. The only problem I have with this movie, and the reason it edges out a little bit with Iron Man in this instance, it touts itself as a political thriller, and a lot of aspects of it are political thriller-esque, but I think it drops the ball a little bit after the reveal, the Hydra reveal. It's a really cool twist. It's a really, really cool little plot moment, and it changes the MCU, and it's all very, very neat from a story perspective. But in terms of the themes that the movie was working on, in terms of like the moral grayness of S.H.I.E.L.D. and like, how can Steve operate in a world that's like this when he's this idealistic, golden age superhero? All that stuff is kind of thrown away when you reveal, oh, S.H.I.E.L.D. wasn't evil, or S.H.I.E.L.D. isn't morally bankrupt or anything like that. It's Nazis, secret Nazis. And it's a cool twist narratively, but thematically it kind of undercuts a lot of the political stuff that the movie had to say. And for me personally,
I don't know.
It doesn't break the movie, you know what I mean? But for me personally, it undercuts my rewatching of it, where it's like, I really love this direction that we're taking with it, and I still love the character, because obviously the movie's mainly about Bucky and Cap, so the political stuff isn't super central to the plot, but it is an aspect of the plot, and it is kind of undercut when you realize that all of the moral grayness that Cap was struggling with can be boiled down to the old enemy that he fought back in the 40s, you know what I mean? And while that has sort of become a little more relevant today with all the the rise of Nazism in America, there is still it's still a little cheap. You know what I mean? It feels a little. It undercuts a lot of the stuff I was enjoying. It's I keep saying that, but it is kind of how I feel about that. And it doesn't ruin the movie. I should not say this. It's number 2, for God's sake. It doesn't ruin the movie. Amazing action, amazing characterization. I loved how they used Natasha in this movie. I think it's the most I've enjoyed Black Widow in the entire MCU. She is.
It's the best portrayal that she's ever given as Black Widow, because it's the truest to the character.
Yes. And her and Cap work together so well. I love their dynamic. I think they're perfect counterbalances to each other. But as friends, I'm glad they didn't make it romantic, because that would have been so fucking disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like work wife and work husband, really. Yeah,
no, seriously. And there's something endearing about that. Yeah, oh my God, I love this movie so much. And again, I was back and forth between this and another movie for number 1. But
yeah, you just happened to put a steaming pile of shit as your number 1 film in the MCU. Well, it's cool, dude. So I get it. Whatever.
But anyway, I've prattled on long enough. That's my 4 through 2.
Damn it, you son of a bitch. All right. Tyler, go ahead before I, lose my mind over here.
Well, speaking of great movies, number 4 is Iron Man 3.
Hey!
You know what? At least it's not your number 1. That's all that matters to me.
What
at
an
least it's not your
movie.
Number 1. Yeah, and I actually haven't seen this movie in quite some time. But yeah, it's weird how divisive people are on this movie.
I know,
it's just
I don't understand.
Really strange. There's really no in between. You either love it or you hate it.
It's the only time I've ever wanted to walk out of a Marvel movie. I'm dead serious.
Which is honestly, it's just mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling to me. But it's just weird. It's very strange. But To me, I would probably say that this movie, out of all the MCU movies, feels like a real movie, like with real characters.
Yes.
It's not set in this like crazy, MCU, this universe or whatever. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's, of course, obviously I like it more than the first two Iron Mans. And Shane Black. This is a Shane Black movie. It's great.
It is.
Yeah, and I remember reading something like the writers, him and Drew Pearce, they said they wanted to, avert the magic in space, and they wanted it to be like a kind of like a techno thriller set in a real world more than the Avengers, and I think they accomplished that. I mean, they accomplished what they set out to do, and
sure,
I like the Mandarin, I do, but I just like Tony in this movie. It reminds me kind of I don't know if y'all are familiar with it, but the book of the Bible, Joe. I mean, you have this like super rich guy. He's stripped of everything, and you just kind of get to go on this journey with him. And and I've got to talk about it. Nobody really talks about it, but I love the use of the song "Blue" by
I do really like that. I really like the way the movie opens. Yeah,
it sets the tone for the whole thing, and I'm like, all right, I'm in.
I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I would talk more about it, but I'll let someone else do that in a little bit.
And then you can chime in.
Who could possibly do that?
Yeah, but my number 3 is Doctor Strange, which I'm surprised it's not higher on.
Oh wow!
It was higher for the longest time, but it's just like on repeat viewings, my enjoyment has kind of just like gone down a little bit.
Yeah, that's it's understandable. But one of the main reasons I really like this movie is because it might be the greatest IMAX 3D experience I've ever had in my entire life. Just because the visuals
I can understand that.
They were insane. And again, it's Marvel taking another chance on kind of an obscure character. I didn't really think it was going to work. And bringing Scott Derrickson on board, kind of weird because he was coming off of Deliver Us from Evil, and that wasn't really a good movie. But I thought he did a great job with the character. I really liked Rachel McAdams in this movie. It's probably my favorite Marvel romance. I really like those two together.
Whoa.
I know it's unpopular, so it's weird, but I really like her in the movie. And Chiwetel Ejiofor, man, he's good in the movie too.
He's solid. He's good, really solid.
He's really good.
Yeah.
And the Ancient One, of course, she's great. And Mads Mikkelsen, I thought he was a little underused, but he's a great villain. He had potential to be the best villain, I think, out of the entire MCU because Mads Mikkelsen is a great actor.
I would agree.
He's kind of underused, but I have a blast with it. There's really not a dull moment in the movie from like start to finish. I was hooked immediately, and I hope they make another one.
I mean, I think they're bound to, especially with all the setup they did for Mordo. I think as a result of this movie, Baron Mordo may end up being like another Loki in the next film.
I hope so. I hope he gets to be like has his moment to shine. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And my number 2, let's talk about a movie called Thor Ragnarok.
Hey, I can respect that.
This movie blew me away. And the main thing I love about Thor Ragnarok is how much freedom Taika Waititi got.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He got an insane amount of freedom. I mean, I love doing research on this movie. He said that 80% of the movie was improvised. Can totally tell that. And he said he came into this movie kind of wanting to reinvent Thor, and he wanted to reinvent the characters and make this kind of feel like the first Thor movie, like the real first Thor movie. And I like that. It felt like that to me.
Yeah, it works.
All the characters were reinvented. The characters feel like themselves, but just reinvented, and I like them even more. I like Loki more, Thor more, and all the new characters too. Tessa Thompson, she was really good as Valkyrie.
She's great.
And I like Mark Ruffalo a lot in the movie too. He's someone I used to kind of hate on him just because, I kind of like Eric Bana as the Hulk. It's unpopular, but I kind of like him.
Whatever floats your boat, man.
I grew up with him, man, and I thought Ruffalo was just a weird choice, but Ruffalo's my favorite Hulk now, man. I liked him a lot. I like hearing him talk like a toddler, like a big
yeah, that was really funny. Yeah,
and Korg. Korg is amazing.
See, well, we'll get to this in a second.
Now I know people are saying, do you want to go ahead and say it?
Well, no, I mean, that was your number 2, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well then, yeah,
you
we
go
will
into
go
you
into
go
that.
into you go yeah go ahead.
Yeah, because Thor. I think first of all, I think that's a very solid 4 through 2. I mean, I don't agree with your number 4, but
and
you know, whatever.
And Immigrant Song, it's like one of the best uses of any song in any Marvel movie.
Yeah, I really love that.
agree.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll dive right back into this because my number 4 is Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah.
I think this movie is a fucking blast, man.
Yes.
It is such a metal movie. Like
Yes.
It really
it
is,
just like
yeah.
oozes like
like a
fucking
concept.
like rock and everything. It's so awesome because the second this movie starts, you're like, fuck yes, like yes,
Yeah.
like he's like fighting off all like the little like skeleton demon dudes with his hammer.
Oh, the
you know,
POV shots of the hammer. Oh my god.
Yes,
I
it was
love it.
great. There was so much great camera work in this film. I think there's like a lot of moments where what you're seeing on screen, especially during the flashback, it's like a fucking painting. It's like
Yeah.
they ripped a painting out of Norse mythology and just plastered
Yes.
it on the screen. It's great. The thing I love about this movie is that it incorporates a lot of that traditional Norse mythology, but with like an 80s stylistic feel, and it's
Yeah.
such a joyride, man. And the thing that I love about this film is that Thor, the character himself, goes through so much maturing throughout the course of this movie, and that by the end, he is truly a fully, realized. He understands his purpose in life. It's almost biblical at the end, to be honest.
Dude
with
turns
you.
into a pirate, man.
He
Yeah,
does.
man.
He does. Yeah, he loses his eye. That was crazy.
Sitting on the bridge, right? When he sits on the bridge of the ship as king.
Yeah.
And then he
Yeah.
goes, "Where should we go?" That reminded me of Captain Kirk in.
very Star
yeah.
Trek.
It's like,
which is
that
funny.
is so cool.
Yeah, it's funny because Chris Hemsworth was Kirk's father in the new Abrams Star Trek movie, so that's a nod there. Yeah, I mean there's a lot of great stuff going on here. I actually don't mind Hela. I actually think she's a fairly competent villain. Sure, yeah, she's a little bit, just evil for the sake of being evil, but there's a lot. There's enough there where you understand her motivations, and you're like, yeah, I'd be pissed at Odin too. He was kind of a dick, Let's face it. I think they could have explored that more, like you said, Brody, but I think they did a great job. And Kate Blanchett just eats it up on screen. I mean, she's a
So
pro,
good.
man. She's so good. But hands down, the best part of the movie was everything on Sakaar. The gladiator battle, the buddy comedy stuff with Ruffalo and Thor and the Hulk and Thor. Tessa Thompson being this drunk. I did not see that coming, and it was
neither,
a great surprise. I loved it.
In a Marvel movie, no less.
For real, everything Jeff Goldblum. I couldn't get enough Jeff Goldblum in this movie. That man. Oh my God, he was such. He was so
They
great.
literally could not have picked a better person to
Honestly,
play the
No, it
leader
was
of Sakaar.
perfect. It really was perfect.
I cheered when he came back in the post credit scene. Everyone was disappointed. They thought they were waiting for like a stinger for the next movie. But then when it was revealed as him, I was like, yes, I'm so happy.
Yes, I know. He was like, "Yay us!" Like, it was so perfect. The thing though that I think may have been the funniest moment in that entire movie is when he's telling the story about the snake. He's like, "Oh, he like turned into a snake," and then he was like, "Bah, I'm a snake," and he's like, "I love snakes." I was like, that was so brilliant because it felt so real, but it was just, it was great.
We're forgetting the most important thing.
What?
Matt freaking Damon, dude.
Oh my God.
the Matt Damon cameo.
That
It was.
scene,
How can
that
you not?
scene
Yeah.
makes Thor 2 worth it. That makes
It
like,
really
Thor 2
does.
worth it. Just for that
so
like joke.
good.
Yeah, it does. I loved the whole aspect of him having like the power of the lightning, like the power of Thor inside him all along. And then when they start playing Immigrant Song the second time, and he's like coming down
Perfect.
like on that group. My God, I got massive chills.
I was
That
hoping they were going to do
freaking
that too. I was really hoping
incredible.
for it.
Yeah.
I did too, because I was like, oh, you blew it at the beginning. I wonder if you're going to bring it back, and they bring it back. It's just, I could talk about so much of this movie for a long time because not only because it's fresh in my head, but it's the movie itself is very fresh in a different take. Like Taika Waititi blew me away with this. I think my only negatives are that they did undercut some of the more emotional moments with humor. It was a little bit more subtle than it was in the past, but that did bother me a little bit. But then I also felt that there was some tonal inconsistencies with the movie, mainly just like the differences between everything that was going on in Sakaar, which was like wacky and almost like a better version of Guardians of the Galaxy, and then like the more theatrical, dramatic like stuff that was going on Asgard and stuff. And I don't think it always blended well, but it ended up working itself out, which is why it's so high on my list. But
Yeah.
anyways, yes, Thor Ragnarok at number 4. Great film. My number 3 is Spider-Man Homecoming. This movie fucking works for me, man. It's my second favorite Spider-Man film behind Spider-Man 2.
No.
Yes,
Spider-Man 1.
yes. The thing that I love about this, and much in the same way that I said Ragnarok is also a breath of fresh air, this film, I love how it plays in the sandbox of the MCU. It's its own thing, but like at the same time, it's it's taking the right amounts from the MCU without feeling like it's referencing everything else. Now, I understand it's great when Spider-Man goes off and does his own stuff, but unfortunately, that's not where we're at with the MCU. He's integrated into the universe.
Yeah.
And I loved the relationship with Tony Stark. I love how he was the pseudo father figure, and he really had to put Peter in his place. Tom Holland is fantastic as the character of Spider-Man. Great stuff here. It's the Spider-Man that I remember from the classic comics. It's not my favorite iteration of Spider-Man, but it is probably the most comic accurate Spider-Man. I think this film, right? Well,
Like
I mean, I prefer
comics.
the ultimate
Yeah.
comics edition of Spider-Man, but that's a later discussion. Anyways,
course, yeah.
This movie, more so than I think any other film on this list, perfectly balances the humor with the drama that's going on. And the best example of this is when Spider-Man is lifting that piece of the building up above him. You know, I was almost certain that they were gonna have some sort of gag that like a bird shits on him or something after he like lifts the rubble that he's found in. And that is a character altering moment there. And they let that moment play out, and they let the power and emotionality of that moment sink in. And that's when I realized that this movie knows how to do it right. It gets Spider-Man. Michael Keaton as the Vulture, I think, is probably the best Marvel villain we've ever had. It's great. In that scene when they're in the car, you could cut the tension with a knife. I mean, it was just, oh my gosh, who saw that coming? When he opens up the door and he's there, unbelievable. This movie, it's a lot of fun. It's a great coming of age film. It's a great John Hughes feeling a movie. I love the little reference they did to Ferris Bueller when he's running through the yard. It was great. And it's nice to see a younger Avenger, I guess. You know, someone who's not an adult. You know, he's still trying to balance all these things. He's a kid who wants to be a man, and that's who Spider-Man is. So I think that this movie nailed all that. So that's why that's a number 3. My number 2 was my number 1 since it came out, and it wasn't until last night that it dropped to number 2.
Here we go.
That is Captain America: Civil War. I think this film is incredible. I think it's great. It's not an exact. By no means is it a strict adaptation of the graphic or the comic arc that I read that was Civil War by Mark Millar and all that.
Yeah.
Or not Mark Millar, Mark Miller, right?
Yes, I think you're right.
Yeah, I was about to say Mark Millar did not do Civil War.
Mark Millar, no.
Yeah, I get them confused. Anyways, it takes elements from the comic and it integrates them into the movie in a way that works. I love how the governments of the world are trying to put sanctions on the Avengers, prevent them from going out there and causing destruction. And I love, and because it makes sense, in this world we've had all these catastrophic events. Someone's got to take a stand here and do something. And I think it's interesting because you go into this movie thinking that you're going to align more with one character, whether it be Tony or Cap, and you understand where the other ones are coming from. I think there's some really powerful emotional moments in here. I also think that there's some great character development that goes on here, and the thing I love about it is that at its core, it is a Captain America film. It's got like a little bit of Avengers 2.5 in there, and it works. But at its core, it's Captain America facing his best friend. And I do actually really like Zemo because I think that he's a personification of all of the people that the Avengers have affected during their saving the world heroics. He is the result of the destruction that they caused, and I think that sure, he's a little weak at times, but I think for the most part it works for me. The airport battle scene I think is great. Sure, the CGI is a little wonky, but whatever. But you know what's even better than that is Cap versus Iron Man, the final battle. You can feel like just it's the climax of everything that's been building up in there, and they just let it all out, and it's great. You know, I don't know. I could talk about this movie a lot. I have a review for that, so you can go check that out. But anyways, everything about Civil War I think is phenomenal. And the only reason it's number 2 is because I actually think number 1 is perfect. I have no complaints with number 1. And after rewatching it last night, I was reminded of the first time I saw that movie, and I was blown away. But anyways, we'll get to that in a second. Brody, you're number 1, Iron Man 3.
Yes.
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. One quick little addendum. Mark Millar did do Civil War. I think you're thinking of
he did.
I think you're thinking of Frank Miller when you say Miller.
Maybe. No, I wasn't thinking of Miller. Yeah, you're right. No, it was Mark Millar who did Civil War. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for correcting me on that.
Yeah, no worries. I
thought it was.
Because I for a second I had the same thought, and I was like, wait a minute, that's the same person. Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So Iron Man 3, and again, like I Winter Soldier on my list as it's written is Winter Soldier is number 1. But I was thinking about the more I thought about it, because of the problems I had with the theme issue that happened with the twist in Winter Soldier. I have almost the exact opposite reaction to the twist in Iron Man 3. I think the twist in Civil War weakens the theme a little bit. The twist in Iron Man 3 strengthens the theme. And I honestly, honest to God, I'm going to be repeating a lot of the stuff that Tyler, you said when you were talking about it.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know, this movie is... when you said that it feels like a real movie, that is almost like the perfect way to describe this. It doesn't feel like it belongs in the MCU, but it doesn't feel like it is necessary to be an MCU movie. You know what I mean? It is just a movie
like
about characters, and it happens to be Iron Man is the character. And so, and obviously, and it's not to say that he is not obviously Tony Stark. He is very obviously Tony Stark and written to be Tony Stark. It's just that the character is not, there's nothing comic booky, to put in like quotation marks there, about the portrayal. He is just a fully functioning, multifaceted person in this movie. And so to me, the reason it doesn't bother me that he was not in the suit very much in this movie is that the whole point of the movie is that Tony relies on his suit so much for not only his strength and his power and his superheroics, but as a form of his identity. He's using the suits to create an identity for himself. And when he comes into contact with all the gods and whatnot, the aliens, so to speak, in Avengers, he sort of has an identity crisis where he's like, well, that's not even enough. My suits, my identity isn't even enough. And throughout the course of the movie, by stripping away all the fancy tech, we get to finally see who Tony Stark is as a person, and he discovers for himself that that's enough. And so when he takes the arc reactor out, it's not because he couldn't have got it out at any other point. It's that he doesn't need it anymore, just like he doesn't need the suit. He chooses the suit, not because he needs it, because he wants to. And so I thought all that stuff was just perfect. And all the stuff with the kid, I thought kids piss me off in movies very frequently. But this kid, oh my God, he's great. He's funny. And I love that he had a little... he and Tony were on even footing, even though he's just a kid and Tony's an adult. They kind of had this back and forth, and Tony was able to he made a joke about his father not coming back, which was super dark for a Marvel movie.
But that was pretty funny.
That's a perfect example of Shane Black just doing Shane Black in this movie. And I love Shane Black as a writer and as a director.
Worked.
Yeah. And so all that stuff I thought was a great. Now the Mandarin twist. This is controversial. I love the Mandarin twist. At first, I hated it. When I first watched this movie, I walked out and I was with one of my best friends, and he said, "What'd you think?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I don't know what I think of this movie," because I was so excited. Like Griffin, like he was saying, the trailer had this awesome depiction of the Mandarin.
If I could just watch the movie that the trailer
Osama
promised,
bin Laden, wannabe, like it was so cool, and I was like, "Oh, I can't believe they didn't do that." But then, the more I thought about it, I was like, if they had done that, that would have been way less interesting. I guess the whole movie is about...
No!
But the whole movie is about like identities and all that sort of stuff, like with Tony figuring out his identity outside the suit. And it makes sense that the Mandarin would be this fake, like a facade of a character. He's so like convenient. Like he's a terrorist who goes around and he's like making threats, and it's so convenient to have this one villain that we can pin all of our problems on. And that's exactly what, and like humanity's inclination to do that, especially like as nations, to sort of pin all our problems on one figure, is exactly what Aldrich Killian is playing on. He's playing on our most natural inclination to just find a scapegoat and then blame everything on that. And I just, everything about that was so like beautiful and so interesting. The more I think about it, like just like, I still haven't like fully thought about every single like thing that they're trying to say with that, in terms of like comments on terrorism, comments on like how we as a society respond to terrorism, how terrorism is used to exploit us, and how like people use our fear to make us do stupid things, like call out a terrorist on live television. You know what I mean? Like, all that stuff is so interesting, and it's one of these movies where I keep thinking about it, and it's not perfect. There are problems with this movie. The third act, like the big fight, it's cool. I love how Rhodes and Tony get to be like buddy cops for a little bit, and it's very Shane Black. But then on top of that, like, the fight to save the president with all the flying suits is a little weak, and then they throw away the whole Pepper thing, and that's like, it's a shame, because that would have been cool to explore. Yeah. But because it's so thought-provoking, because it's such a fully realized vision, it's the one MCU movie I constantly want to watch. I would say I love this movie as much as I love any other like non-comic book movie, and to me, that's something that most other Marvel movies haven't given me. Not Civil War. Not Civil War. Winter Soldier.
Jeez. Winter
Soldier comes close where I love it, but there are like still issues with it where it is still very much a comic book movie, and that's not a problem. That's not a disparaging thing to say, but it is still very much a comic book movie. And it's a great one. Whereas Iron Man is a great movie that happens to be about comic book characters. And for me, that is just something as a viewer that I value personally. And other people might not, but for me personally, it speaks to me. And I love it. And I'm going to stop talking about it because I'll go on all night. But yeah.
That's fine. You know, you had your little moment. Now it's time to get with the rest of the crowd. And that is with Tyler and I, because I'm so happy we're on the same page.
I kind of want to change my number one to Iron Man 3.
Stop it. Yeah. Stop it right now. Stop it. Don't do this to me. We're on the same page. I'm happy. We could discuss this together.
I'll let you take it over, man.
No, man, you go before me, dude. Come on.
Our number one is Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
Yes.
How cute.
Yes.
Dude, this movie came out in 2014. Was it 2014?
Yes, April 2014. The only reason I will forever remember this is I got to see this movie a month in advance.
That's so cool.
Damn.
I got to see it a month in advance. I was like shitting my pants waiting in line to go see this movie. I couldn't freaking believe that I was going to go see The Winter Soldier a month in advance, and it was everything I had hoped for.
Oh my
God.
God.
Okay, so I'm going with my friend who's excited out of her mind to see this movie, and I don't like the first Captain America, so I'm thinking, all right, cool, movie starts in 30 minutes, 2.5 hours, I'm out of here, let's get going. Completely blown away by this movie. I mean, dude, it's a comic book movie for sure, but I mean, it's at its best in my opinion. Like, just
for sure,
dude, it's espionage, political thriller. It's just some of the best action in any comic book movie in general, man.
I would agree with you. The going back to the espionage thing, this movie is it encompasses that genre perfectly. I mean, people talk about the political thriller nature of it, but this is it almost feels like a spy film at a lot of times.
It has a lot of like Metal Gear Solid. Have you played
movies.
those? Like, it feels like that.
Yeah,
awesome.
for sure.
And
continue.
no, what were you saying?
I said just continue.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't even know where to start. I mean, there's so many good scenes in this movie. It has the elevator scene's like one of my favorite scenes, probably like in any movie ever. When Captain America's just standing
really
in the elevator, and it's just so good, man.
Oh my god!
I think the only thing for me that probably tops that is the entire bridge sequence.
Oh no, yeah, dude, that's number one. That's number one.
That is absolutely incredible.
That's my jaw was on the floor, man. It was
Same,
when I was
dude.
watching. I was like, "Are you kidding me? Is this really happening right now in a Marvel movie?"
Oh man, the fight choreography was insane. It was so good.
And I think that's why Civil War was kind of lower on my list, just because after seeing what the Russo brothers did in this movie, I had such high expectations, and I wanted more of that. And
I would agree.
You know, they did deliver on some of the action for sure, but like the airport scene compared to what, like the bridge scene in the Winter Soldier, I mean, it's just, you can't even compare them, in my opinion. At least, I mean, it's just like two totally different things.
That's fair. That's fair.
In my opinion.
No, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't argue with you. I do think the bridge scene is much better. And just going back to it, I think rewatching this film last night, it's so serious. It takes itself seriously. It is there are stakes at hand. There's real character development here. The political thriller nature of the film. You said kind of tailors off, Brody. I actually think that lended more to it. The reveal that Hydra, had infiltrated the government. Essentially, it makes you question what kind of people have their hands in our own government. If there are some, and I'm sure there might be some. It's actually very relevant to today's society.
In a lot of ways, you're right. It has gotten a little more relevant as time has gone on.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
But I just, I can't really. There's just everything worse for this film. It's putting Captain America, who is this traditional American icon, this really moral hero, and putting him in a morally gray society, and it works incredibly well. I love how him and Sam Wilson just click instantly because that sort of thing, he needs friends, I guess, and that kind of makes sense. They're both vets. They both experienced similar horrors, different eras, but similar horrors, and so I understand their relationship. I think Anthony Mackie is incredible as the Falcon. He's one of my favorite side characters in the film. He's actually the better version of the War Machine, I would say.
Oh my god!
But you mentioned the relationship with Peggy. I think that is beautiful here. So touching. You find out she has Alzheimer's. It kills you.
That seems heartbreaking. Honest to God,
it really, really is. I love Robert Redford. Yeah, for real. Robert Redford. I'd probably put in the top 5 best MCU villains, and I don't think people necessarily look at him as being one of the best ones because he's just like a government figure,
Robert Redford, man.
Dude, he's great.
They got Robert Redford to be in a movie like this.
In an MCU film, who would have fucking thought? And the best part is that he says "Hail Hydra." Robert Redford says "Hail Hydra" in this movie. I just want to point that out.
Oh my god!
But then the stuff with him and Nick Fury. Great. The relationship with Black Widow is
awesome in this movie. She's so awesome.
Believable.
Falcon too.
Great. Yeah, Falcon's also great. The opening fight sequence on the Lumerian Star had me speechless.
It's one of my favorite scenes of all. Yeah.
That just gives you a taste of the fight choreography to come. I mean, like the wide shots of him going through, knocking people off the ship. The way they cut that in a way where you felt the impacts of every single punch and every deflection and bash with the shield was beautiful.
I love how it held on the hits. So like when he hits, you see him hit, and it's not like a cheap cut. So you they're not faking it. It's an actual hit. He kicks someone, and you see the whole thing. It's great. Oh my god.
Right. I mean, they just did everything was right in this movie. Like I can't pinpoint one thing that I didn't like about the movie. I love absolutely everything, and especially on rewatching it last night, I was reminded of how truly great this movie is. And the reason is because it actually feels grounded to some extent. I mean, yeah, the Hydra stuff, the helicarriers, it's all a little fantastical. You suspend your disbelief for that.
Right, yeah.
But for the most part, it feels like a story that would take place in today's society. And that's what I love about it. It's the closest that Marvel has ever gotten to making a grounded story, and I love it for that. I mean, I could talk about this movie all day, but it is truly one of my favorite comic book films of all time. It really, really is. But there you have it, guys. Holy crap. We've been talking for about 2 hours here, but hopefully you enjoyed every bit of it. We got to dive into some of our favorite Marvel films. You obviously know our rankings. Actually, let's go around the table real quick. Everyone just say your ranking, just numerically, just from 17 to 1, just so that everyone has the ranking fresh in their head right now. Brody, you start.
Okay, 17, Iron Man 2. 16, The Incredible Hulk. 15, Thor the Dark World. 14, Doctor Strange. 13, Ant-Man. 12, Avengers Age of Ultron. 11, Captain America Civil War. 10, Thor. 9, Guardians of the Galaxy. 8, Spider-Man Homecoming. 7, The Avengers. 6, Thor Ragnarok. 5, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. 4, Captain America The First Avenger. 3, Iron Man. 2, Captain America The Winter Soldier. And 1, Iron Man 3.
There you have it. All right, that's Brody's list. Tyler, let's hear your list one more time.
Let me take a deep breath, man. All right, number 17, The Incredible Hulk. 16, Iron Man 2. 15, Thor the Dark World. 14, Ant-Man. 13, Captain America The First Avenger. 12, Spider-Man Homecoming. 11, Thor. 10, Iron Man. 9, The Avengers. 8, Guardians of the Galaxy. 7, Captain America Civil War. 6, Avengers Age of Ultron. 5, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, 4, Iron Man 3, 3, Thor Ragnarok, 2, Doctor Strange, 1, Captain America the Winter Soldier.
There you go.
Hey.
And then one more time, my 17 through 1, we're coming at number 17, Iron Man 3, 16, Thor the Dark World, 15, Iron Man 2, 14, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, 13, Avengers Age of Ultron, 12, The Incredible Hulk, 11, Thor, 10, Doctor Strange, 9, Guardians of the Galaxy, 8, Captain America, The First Avenger. Actually, no, I switched that around. 8 is actually The Avengers, 6 is Iron Man, or... Hold on, crap. I just messed this whole thing up because of Captain America. 8 is The Avengers. 7 is Iron Man. 6 is Ant-Man. 5 is Captain America, The First Avenger. 4 is Thor Ragnarok. 3 is Spider-Man Homecoming. 2 is Captain America Civil War. And number 1, the best film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is Captain America, The Winter Soldier. I love that our list had some similarities, but there was a lot of variety in there. I think that you guys listening, you're going to get a lot of differing opinions on films, and it's great because, you know, there's a lot of movies in the MCU, so you're going to have a lot of different opinions. I think this episode was a great, example of the differing opinions. So if you liked this episode, thanks for sticking with us for over 2 hours. This is awesome. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I had a great time discussing this.
Oh, absolutely,
but if you did like this, good. Good.
I'm gonna go watch The Winter Soldier now.
Go watch it, man. The First Avenger for you, Tyler. You got to watch that one.
After Iron Man.
True, yeah.
Hell yeah. Anyways, if you like this video, be sure to like it, share with your friends, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more movie reviews, our James Bond podcast, The Words Are Not Enough, and more special episodes like this. You look around the Men vs. Movies channel, you'll find something you'll like, I'm sure of it. Thank you to Tyler Tompkins for joining us today. Tyler, where can everyone find you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram and Twitter and on YouTube. Just search my name, Tyler Tompkins, and I should be the first one to pop up. I do movie reviews and pretty much everything that Griffin does.
Boom, but he shows off his Blu-ray collection, so it's a little different.
A little different.
And he has different opinions than me, so another reason to go check out and subscribe to his channel. All right, Brody, thank you for joining me again on another podcast-centric episode. Where can everyone find you?
People can just find me on Twitter at Brody Saravelli. If you want to argue with me about Iron Man 3, come at me. Let's do it.
Please
Guardians
do.
of the Galaxy Volume 2, even. Like, honest to God, I'm going to get some shit for that. But, go ahead.
I'm with you, man.
Hell yeah. Solidarity.
All right. Well, there you go. You know where to find those two. And if you like me specifically and you like everything I've said, you can always give me a follow on Twitter at Griff Schiller. All right. Thanks for tuning into this episode, guys. Leave your lists in the comment section below. I want to know where your rankings align. Until next time, we'll catch you then. Next time. Wow, I fucked up that outro. We'll catch you next time. See you later.